Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Jim Cornette Experience. Today, the WWE are the kings of the forest, and Tony Khan is a squirrel with a whole bunch of nuts. It's the How Much Worse Can This Get edition of the Jim Cornette Experience. And joining me, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's a squirrely young fella who keeps his nuts to himself. The great Brian Last, everybody.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again, nuts and all. And we got the usual nuts to talk about this week here on the show. And I'm still tired from WrestleMania.
I've got scribbled. It's another one of those shows. Here, got a lot of notes. I've got multiple pads. Things going on here. I don't even know if we've got an order of events for this program. We're going to have some classic wrestling, probably at the end, the lights out segment. The fans can stay or leave. Classic Mid-South wrestling talk involving yours truly, but I'm moving mighty slow today, Brian. I'm sore from the tippy of the top of my head to the tippy of the tips of my toes. Because I got out and I did physical labor yesterday.
Oh, no, I saw a picture on Twitter. Stacy posted of you laying under the tree with the dog. It looked like the 40 steps you took to get there must have been really exhausting.
No, that was after the physical labor. See, now I was enjoying the fruits of my labors as opposed to enjoying the fruits of your loom. And I'd already done the physical labor. The Monroe brothers were out here, Alf and Ralph, and they were checking out this area. They're going to make me a nice little patio and a little fire pit where I can roast weenies way back in the far corner of the property. So where I used to run away from home when I was a kid. You get far enough back there when the leaves are on the trees, you can't see the house. That's running away from home. And I was wheeling a wheelbarrow around, spraying the weed killer in mulch beds and puttering like a gentleman farmer. And after you get about 1,000 feet or 1,500 feet in with that wheelbarrow puttering around, it gets goddamn, my shoulders hurt. I sound like Ron right now. Now, my shoulder, Brian, is what these mean old wrestlers used to target in the matches. But anyway, the relaxation with Harley was after that work. She was sitting out there under the dogwood, and I laid down next to her, and she gave me the puppy kisses, and we were just watching the plebeians, as Bobby Heenan would say, drive by in their motor vehicles. And then I was starting to think, as I was laying there with Harley in a nice breeze and beautiful weather, clearing my throat from the pollen, underneath the dogwood tree with the pink blossoms, I'm thinking, why does anybody my age ever want to do anything the rest of their life again?
So they can get into the Hall of Fame. Why do you think?
Well, I would believe it more if it was just a greediness that they have deep down in their soul that they've got to make some money. But the Hall of Fame may be secondary. But what the fuck? That's another reason that I'm very happily retired and only speak to you on certain occasions, like constantly. But we're going to do something about that shortly. Anyway, and I appreciate it. Stacy snuck up and took a picture of me and Harley sitting under the tree there and tweeted that. And everybody remarked how wonderfully relaxed I look. See, I'm just a nice, compassionate, sympathetic country gentleman is what I am. Don't you agree with that assessment?
I actually kind of do, because if you were just sitting there left alone with your dog under your tree, you'd be very happy. But if a car hit your fence, you would clearly get up and curse at every single person involved. But
yes,
that wouldn't have happened if you weren't just left alone. And if they
couldn't get out of the car, I'd try to drag them out.
Oh, that's a new one. I didn't hear that part before.
Well, no, they got out, but I was about ready to drag somebody out if they couldn't get out.
You never said that before. I didn't know that was your intention.
Well, no, they were already out by the time I got down there.
But you would have dragged them out.
Well, if he was still laying there, and I would get the fuck up anyway.
Was he a big boy?
No, they were a bunch of fucking teenage juvenile delinquents. Yeah, they ought to raise the driving age to 25. That'd solve a lot of problems. But nevertheless, back to the tree and the dog. I was laying there under the tree with the dog, the nice breeze and everything. I'm thinking, that was a beautiful Saturday. I didn't watch any wrestling yesterday. I didn't talk to you or anybody else about any wrestling. I've also got the garage straightened up. So these are the important things in my life these days, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I got to send out.
It's going to be a good show.
What did you do? How useful were you yesterday in your activities with a beautiful spring day? I didn't speak to you. That means you didn't speak to me. So you had an equal opportunity to make yourself goddamn not only relaxed and a loving parent to Swami, but also get some work done around the property there, around Last Manor. What did you do with your time?
Swami and the children, and I have people that we pay a lot of money to do the work, so I don't have to do the work around Last Manor. And it was not a beautiful day. It rained, it poured. Now it's beautiful. It's going to be in the 70s the next few days.
Well, you got our weather, finally.
Well,
now you ought to be out there. It's not about who you pay. See, you're all about the capitalism, Brian. You got to go and you got to get your hands dirty out in the soil. Commune with Mother Nature. Water the things that you planted and see them grow to reach to the sky and the sun and create life and shit, or chop it down and poison it. If they're weeds, you can do that. You can do either one. You can create life or you can fucking poison it. But you get out there and do shit for yourself on your own property. Be the goddamn homesteader.
I've learned in my life that I do much better standing on the balcony and pointing. There. That one. What's that? That mulch. I'm better at that than actually going down there. I'll last 2 minutes in the dirt and I'll be like, I need to take a shower. This sucks. I'm going for a swim.
Why are all the gardeners in the Northeast that you see of Hispanic origin, but all the companies are named after Italian people?
That's not true.
It was in Connecticut. Oh, Vince's
part of Connecticut, maybe.
Well, that's the part that I experienced. I'm sorry. I didn't know you weren't allowed into the finer neighborhoods. But anyway, where I was trying to go with that a minute ago was I have to thank some members of the Cult of Cornette community, specifically, in this case, Joni Aries, our friend from out in Washington State. After she heard one of the recent programs, I can't remember which one it was, where I had sung a stirring rendition, I believe, of the North to Alaska by Johnny Horton. And she was impressed with that. And turns out...
get out of here. This is already bullshit.
Oh, come on.
She was impressed with that?
That I got all the words right? She said, you got all the words right. See, that is one of the most praiseworthy fucking compliments of my singing that I've gotten from anybody in some time.
That's a great compliment for a singer. How did I sound? Well, you got the words right.
Yeah, I got every single one of the lyrics right. But anyway, in this case, it come to find out her father was a huge record collector. And so she had ended up with a large variety, some that she's donated to different places, the Country Music Hall of Fame or whatever. But she sent me 2 records. One was I remember this plain as day. This album was sitting in my Uncle Harold's living room when I was about 9 years old or whatever, but it's a Homer and Jethro album. You know, the comedians, Homer and Jethro.
I'm not too familiar with their work.
I thought you had all of their releases. But also she sent me Johnny Horton's Greatest Hits. And right on it is North to Alaska and all of his other fine. And he was the king of the story song, The Battle of New Orleans. Brian, you remember the UWF / Mid-South
the last battle
angle with Eddie Gilbert and Sting and blah, blah, blah. They fought all over the arena and they called it the Battle of New Orleans was after that song. That was the inspiration for that. It was, if your mother was like Mama Cornette, then she
wasn't.
She would sing to you the Battle of New Orleans. It wasn't it wasn't a go to sleep, a lullaby type of song. It's more like when we would be walking back through the alfalfa field back behind the property on the way to the lake to go fishing. She would sing the Battle of New Orleans. What are you laughing at?
The Twisted Mayberry of the youth that you talk about on these shows. We went through the alfalfa fields to go to the lake. What is going on?
The farm behind us, what was directly behind our property back then was an alfalfa field where the cows would graze. And you would have to walk through that to get to the lake back there that the farmer, Captain Jack Matlick, had it back there. He had kept it stocked not only with bass, but also there was big snapping turtles as big around as a garbage can cover. If you were brave enough, which my cousin Larry was one time, set out a turtle line and caught one of those fucking things until it almost fucking snapped his wrist off when he went to fucking pull it in. They can fucking break pliers, those goddamn snapping turtles. But anyway, on the way over there, she would sing that because it's a marching song. Obviously, you remember the Battle of New Orleans.
No, I was not born yet. No.
No,
for the battle nor the song being sung to children. That was before my time.
In 1814, we took a little trip along with Colonel Jackson down the mighty Mississippi. We took a little bacon and we took a little beans and we caught the bloody British in the town of New Orleans. We fired our guns and the British kept a-coming. There wasn't as many as there was a while ago. We fired once more and they began to running on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, they ran through the briars and they ran through the brambles and they ran through the bushes where a rabbit couldn't go. They ran so fast that the hounds couldn't catch them on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico.
You know, none of these songwriters were historians.
Well, yeah, I don't know how historically accurate this account was, but I guarantee you, I think there was, 1961, 62, maybe thereabouts. Every kid in the 60s had heard this song more than they had actually read about the real skirmish.
Every kid in the 60s heard this song and then a couple years later said, thank God for the Beatles.
We fired our cannon till the barrel melted down, so we grabbed an alligator and we fought another round. We filled his head with cannonballs and powdered his behind, and when we touched the powder off, the gator lost his mind. We fired our guns and the British kept... There's 5 more verses. Yeah, would you like to hear them?
No. That would violate various... rules and laws.
Copyright laws. I understand. I'm sorry. Well, we want to credit. I don't know who wrote the fucking thing. Johnny Horton sang it. You know, Google it, kids. We're crediting the songwriter of this thing. A big fucking hit back then.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so thank you, Joni, for those albums from your collection in honor of my singing skills.
The vinyl will taste better than your cake.
Oh, come on now. And how much vinyl have you eaten to know? I'll have you know vinyl tastes like shit.
I'm not commenting. I have no comment on this.
But folks, I don't have record albums at JimCornette.com, but if you need merchandise, buy some of mine. There's the play. It sells itself. It's quality merchandise at low prices with quick delivery, courtesy of the Feather Bottoms and their fine, ultra careful handling system. But nevertheless, JimCornette.com for all your needs, including the Midnight Express action figure sets, the Heavenly Bodies action figure sets, which are going more quickly. The Cult of Cornette membership certificates, fine T-shirts, spread my face around the world. And have my face on your chest wherever you go, and more at JimCornette.com. Now, I don't want to be too commercial, so we will leave it there. And Brian, real quick, also an update on a topic that we had. Remember, we just talked about Al Zink passing away at 90-something years old. The guy that tried to gas the whole goddamn roster that night at that show with the ammonia leak. The people tweeted out other articles about that. I had the one that we got in the paper. Apparently, the next night, I thought we were leaving to go I thought we were leaving to go home the day after the ammonia leak incident, but we had another show. And on this whole loop, as I've mentioned before, we had Stan Lane just cracked up on the road and said, fuck it, I'm going back to Charlotte. And he no-showed this rotten loop. And so apparently did Abdullah the Butcher. I'd forgotten about this. And so another couple names had no-showed. And the night that the last show in Canada before we came back home was the night after the show with the ammonia leak that canceled the event. And Al Zink was quoted in that local paper as blaming all the no-shows that had never been on any of these shows on the ammonia leak the previous night in the... Oh, yeah, it fucked them up. They had to go to the hospital. So a true promoter to the end, but nevertheless...
Well, hold on the topic of Al Zink... did you have anything for other...
Well, yeah. Well, I was going to... This is what the email was about. I had mentioned I saw that article in the newspaper, but did you have a question, or on Twitter in the newspaper?
No.
Did you have a question?
No. Go ahead. You may be going where I was going to go, so go ahead.
Well, hi, Jim and Brian, because we were confused as to where Al Zink had promoted and where did Emile Dupree, Rene Dupree's father, figure in it. Was this the Maritimes or where it was Newfoundland? Where are these people and what the fuck was going on, right? Our geography in that end of Canada was lacking. Well, a listener named Rob wanted to write in to clarify these things. Jim and Brian, the Maritimes is a term used to describe the provinces of Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and New Brunswick. This term used to refer to basically Atlantic Canada. The reason Newfoundland is not included as part of the Maritimes is because it did not join Canada until 1949, and the term Maritimes predated that.
That's where the Trailer Park Boys are from, Nova Scotia.
Oh, there are... What? Now, who?
You don't know... It's one of the greatest shows... comedy-wise ever made. At least the original seasons of it.
I'm glad you could articulate that so well.
Well, thank you very much.
Tell me exactly who. It's one of the greatest shows of comedy ever.
I didn't know how to phrase it. It's one of the greatest comedy shows of all. It just doesn't sound right.
Sound like Candido. What movie did you see? Carlito's Way? What's it about? Well, it's about this guy named Carlito and the way he does things.
I want to talk about an airplane ride. Oh, listen, I have something here. Were you done with your email?
Hold on. Are we leaving Canada now? I was going to ask a question about this.
Oh, okay. I had something about Al Zink.
Well, we can come back to Al, but I want to get to his country first. Prince Edward Island is a province, just like Manitoba, just like fucking Manitoba. I started saying Manitoba twice. What the goddamn?
Yeah, you're on a roll too. Big boy.
Alberta. There's Alberta. There's Manitoba. There's British Columbia, right? There's fucking Quebec. There's Ontario. Those are the provinces over this way. But how does a goddamn island get to be its own province? I think that Alberta and Manitoba and all these other places are a lot bigger than a fucking island. And Nova Scotia technically is a kind of a little island sitting out there, or a couple islands. New Brunswick's not. How do they get to be their own provinces? Shouldn't they be grouped into a group like the Islandic provinces? At least Newfoundland is a land that New apparently found. I don't know, Stephen P. New's ancestors apparently founded this land. But how do they get to be their own provinces? They're islands. Does anyone live there? Do they have populations these days?
I have no idea. I know what Prince Edward Island is because years ago I had a girlfriend who was obsessed with Anne of Green Gables. And that's where Anne of Green Gables and Anne of Avonlea, that's where it all takes place.
To know that there had to have been a girlfriend involved.
Of course. She made me watch that shit over and over. I wouldn't pretend I liked it. I let her know I did not like it. And I did not like it. And she made me watch it. She was very cruel. She was a cruel woman.
Me no likey. All right, what about Al Zink?
What about him?
You were going to mention him.
Oh, what a great guy. No, here's what I had here. A member of the cult of Cornette posted this. Dave Arthur. I just wanted to thank Jim and Brian last. I get my full name, thank you. Jim and Brian last
Well, that's because he wants to thank you last.
For making mention of my grandfather, Al Zink's passing on this week's episode of The Experience. The man certainly led an interesting life, and it was a hilarious and entertaining tribute. Just to touch on one question Jim had, it was my grandfather who was there at the infamous ammonia leak in St. John, New Brunswick at the WCW show. Apparently Abdullah, Stan Lane, and Eddie Gilbert, along with my Uncle Shane, all had to go to the hospital for treatment that night.
Okay, there you go.
And couldn't make the following show in Halifax the next day. If you'd like to learn more about my grandfather or international wrestling territory here in the Maritimes, please feel free, excuse me, I can't read. Please feel free to reach out. And it's from Dave Arthur, the grandson of Al Zink.
Oh, thank you, Dave, and that was again because I just seen somebody had tweeted the newspaper article from the next night that one of the Cult of Cornette members that has heard me talk about the famous ammonia leak incident in the past. So, how can more people are talking about the goddamn shows we did in the Maritimes or wherever the fuck 35 years ago than we're actually at them at this point now?
Well, AEW may bring that back and decide to give the audience ammonia at the shows.
I can't reach the Midnight Express scrapbook right now, and what I don't want to deviate from our tightly controlled format here, but I can't. We were on the road for like 3 days with a day off because they canceled a show because of lack of interest or whatever at a Super 8 in fucking Boston. And we've been here for 3 nights in a row, and that's what Stan said, fuck it, he got up the next morning and flew home to fucking Charlotte rather than go to Atlantic, Canada for 4 days in front of no people. And he didn't even know we were going to be gassed at that point. Anyway, all righty. And real quick, before we get to some of the insanity and inanity that has gone on in the world of wrestling, I feel so much pressure, Brian. We've got to report all these things, and it's hard to keep up with these days. There's so many of them. But anyway, we got a email from member of the cult, Austin, who says, "Hi, Jim and Brian. Firstly, thanks very much for the incredible efforts you both make to slog through the current wrestling product for our masochistic entertainment. I can honestly say that I look forward to your podcast in the same way I used to look forward to watching wrestling back when it was still good. But I have a request for a special mention on the show. My friend Chris of, Tauranga, Tauranga. I'm sorry, New Zealand. I don't even know actually what the accent is in New Zealand to try to do it. Entertain you. Oh, quit.
Hey, that's the accent in New Zealand.
All right, my friend Chris, who is not a sheep herder, from Tauranga, New Zealand, is struggling at the moment with stage 3 colorectal cancer. And while usually an avid and habitual listener of your podcast, he's been unable to listen to recent weeks due to an infection which has left him without energy to eat or move and is left bedbound, for which he sleeps most of the day away. His family, friends, and especially his partner, Jess, are praying and doing their best for his recovery. But due to the pain and other complications he's experiencing, his own hopes are, as you could imagine, very muted. Therefore, I was hoping that you might be able to send some words of encouragement in your own inimitable way. We'll talk about that in a second. To help Chris to find the strength to keep going. He needs all the help and support he can get at the moment, as he still has so much life left ahead of him. And yet we want to ask all the cult of Cornette to send it out in the ether somewhere. Tweet it, and maybe Austin follows us and we'll retweet some, or I don't want to give this gentleman's goddamn email address for all of the crackpots out there in the world, but everybody's sending positive thoughts and energy to Chris in New Zealand. But in my own inimitable way, how can I motivate someone to, hey, Chris, fuck you. Well, a little cancer, nip up. Be a big boy. No, come on. He's going through all kinds of, I don't want to browbeat him, and that's my inimitable way. That's why nobody can inimit it, isn't it, Brian?
I guess.
So how would I bully poor Chris into getting up out of bed and kicking cancer's ass? I want to motivate him in a positive fashion.
Chris, get better. I'm going to take that wife of yours and move to Monte Cristo.
Well, now, how far is Monte Cristo from fucking Tauranga, New Zealand? You don't even know if she'd want to go yet.
That's true. I haven't met her.
You're trying to,
I don't know her, Chris. For the record, I don't know your wife. I was joking. There's nothing there.
Oh, now see that? If he believed it, that might have got him to nip up. See, because nevertheless. Well, and also here's the thing, partner Jess. Could not be short for Jessica. Could be short for
That's true.
For Jess.
We don't know what's going on, but Chris.
So did you still want his wife?
I don't know.
For sure?
I don't, again, it was just a metaphorical story to try to motivate our friend here who I'm trying to talk to, and you're just driving the knife deeper into his abdomen for some reason.
Trying to goddamn abscond with somebody. You may have talked too far out of your ass ahead of time.
Well, again, I'm not talking about any orifices or anything. You're just a disgusting man. But Chris, get better, Chris. AEW will get funnier and funnier. Get better to listen to us. Somehow get through it.
To do what? To listen to us what? Chris, I think the best thing for everybody now is for you to just nip up and take care of all of this.
Chris, a special song for you. I don't know your wife.
Goddamn only lyric. I don't know your wife.
I think it's a hit. There's so much that can be done with it.
I bet you somebody has the copyright or the trademark on that by this point.
There was an article in the paper the other day about some guy. I didn't even finish reading it because I got distracted, but I have it up on my computer still. Some guy went and Googled his name and he saw some guy wrote a song about him. And he's like, what the fuck is this? There's some guy whose business now is he just writes songs about random people thinking they will somehow find it one day. Get well, Chris.
Speaking of random people saying random things, we've gotten feedback from a lot of the members of the cult of Cornette on several people involved with, on the periphery of our friends over at AEW on the roster there, that have said some bizarre things or potentially thought-provoking things in some cases. Brian, you have audio that we're going to play of one of them at least. You're going to read some more. How should we attack this? In what order should we start with these cretins?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things happening, and it's almost like there's two different camps in AEW. Not that it's intentional in terms of the messaging that gets out. There's some people that just seem insecure about either the company they work for or their place in wrestling. And there's other people that say the truth out loud. And it's a rare thing in AEW. It's a rare thing in a place built on NDAs and Tony not answering any real questions. So why don't we start with Kenny Omega? Now
there's as good a place as any to start. How is Kenny and his guts?
Well, that's the story we had heard. Obviously, he's out with diverticulitis, and the word is, I think the last thing we saw Dave Meltzer report was that he was going to get the surgery. I think that's what I had seen. But in the meantime, he's been mentioned on TV a few times as the Young Bucks turned heel, and he is still streaming his video game playing with friends of his. Recently, Adam Cole and Riho appeared on his video game stream, startling people that Riho was bigger than Adam Cole.
Oh, come on now.
No, she kind of was. And he was on his video game streaming.
So people just tune in to watch him play a video game with one of his wrestler friends, and they talk to each other.
Well, the person he's with in the video we're about to play audio from does not appear to be a wrestler friend. I don't know who
or
it is.
any kind of friend.
It's a friend of some sort, and they're playing Street Fighter 6. And while they're playing, so you'll hear some...
What happened to the first 5?
Well, Street Fighter 2 is really the classic. That's the one that broke it out. But, and I hear a plane overhead again.
There's
the window's
a plane
open.
Over
Did you hear that?
I could hear your plane. For the first time, I heard your background noise.
For the first time, you know what it's like to have sat at Shea Stadium. But Kenny Omega's playing this game, so you'll hear some background noise. But here's Kenny Omega addressing various things. And this goes for a few minutes, so stop me. We'll break it up. We'll review this. Here's Kenny Omega talking about AEW.
So, just because I represent a company or because I am an employee of one company over another, does that mean I love every storyline? Does that mean that I agree with every decision? No, of course not. I'm not the booker. I don't have power. I haven't had power for more than 4 years now in that company. And I know that's going to sound odd because, like, well, Kenny, you're an EVP. I'm nothing. I am...
Let me stop.
Okay, besides the off-putting, ridiculous sound effects going on, and how can you pay attention to either what you're playing or what you're saying if you're squishing the aliens or whatever the focus of this is?
That's not Street Fighter.
Have we now learned that they just made him an EVP in name only because he was part of the group of friends, but he has nothing to do with anything and hasn't? And I guess all those Japanese indie girl wrestlers got their visas approved and flights and everything just because Tony loved them too. But is he trying to say that they just made him one because he was part of the group? He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't want to be an EVP of anything or have any power to do anything?
Well, we'll play more from this, obviously, but I think what he is saying, if you read between the lines too, is, I got nothing to do with the bad shit you're seeing right now. Tony Khan consolidated power in terms of booking years ago. I'm not booking the TV. I'm not going to rip it, but I'm not going to defend it. It's not my TV. That's what he's saying, I think.
Well, let's see what else he says.
Nothing. And I'll tell you why. It's because I'm a terrible EVP. I don't deserve to be an EVP.
What?
If people want to ask for my advice, I'll do my best to help them. If there's a flyer to put up backstage, I'm going to do my best to be that person. But if we go back, and I don't want to have to comment on it, but I'll do it just because, you know, it adds context to it.
And it's the popular thing. Let's be honest. It's the thing to do right now is talk about CM Punk.
And apparently he talks in a sing-song, breathy fashion when he's playing games as well as when he's doing TV promos.
I could see him in another life being an effective HR person. I really can, but let's go back to HR himself. HR Puffin stuff himself. Kenny Omega.
I thought my duty as an EVP during Brawl Out would be to enter the situation while there was chaos, de-escalate it, and create a peaceful environment for everyone.
All right, let's stop it right there. So when CM Punk and Ace Steel's wife and CM Punk's dog were sitting in CM Punk's dressing room, and the Young Bucks, Mega Parikh, Kenny Omega, Swami's barking, but he was not there, as well as Brandon Cutler, Michael Nakazawa, all walk into the room. He's saying he saw his role as a way to de-escalate things. Now, he wasn't the first person walking in the room, obviously.
And apparently that also says he knew there was going to be some escalation once that they got in there, and he's trying to go calm them down.
Can someone shut Swami up? I wish he was here right now, Kenny, to help me out here with Swami. But it's interesting, because they all walk down the hallway together. So what's that conversation coming down the hallway? If he's already feeling this, let's go back to this audio.
I was able to create a peaceful environment for the most important person in that altercation, and that was Larry. And I swear to God, honestly, that was my biggest. And yeah, it sounds funny, but like, I look at animals and our pets as people, and as, you know, Dobby, of course, one of the most important people in my life. So to get little Larry out of there was the most important thing to me, and that was the success.
Dogs are dogs. Dogs are not people. I love dogs too, but
hey,
come
now
on.
don't shit on the first thing that fucking Kenny Olivier has ever said that I like him for.
Well, here's the only problem with this. I just want to say this as I'm thinking of it. He's saying his only goal there was to save Larry and get Larry out of the way. Did he know Larry was in the room when he walked into the room? Whatever. When they were coming down the hallway and they're like, we're going to go in there, we're going to fucking let him have it. Was he going, what about the dog?
No, I think he was probably, as he said earlier, he's hearing the here go the buckaroos. Here goes us. They're all pissed. He's gonna try to calm everything down. But once he gets in the room and he sees Punk on top of one of the buckaroos and the other one about to get clocked with a fucking chair, and there's poor Larry. He's Larry, come to me, baby.
I see which way to go. Let's go back to Kenny Omega.
Unfortunately, try as I may, things were too chaotic for me to be able to do anything by my own power. That was a moment when I had seen that there were... Good call. I believe it was in that instance when I realized that the way that I wanted to go about things wasn't necessarily the way that other people wanted to. It was also the way that other people necessarily didn't want to. And then it was also...
Well, let's stop it right there.
I like a man that speaks his mind in plain language.
Well, again, he's going slow because I think he's playing the video game too while he's doing this.
And also like a man that speaks his mind and quits playing his game for a minute if he's going to fucking say something important.
But he just said out loud he disagreed with the way other people went about it. He's not talking about CM Punk. CM Punk wasn't one of the EVPs coming down the hallway. This is the first we're hearing of any potential rift or issues between Kenny and the Bucks in how the Bucks handled this. Because this was they were leading the pack down the hallway. Not Kenny, the Young Bucks.
In the group of kids in the playground, the Buckaroos are the two little smartasses that because they've got two or three other fucking bigger guys with them on their side that they can go around and be wise asses. But Kenny's more like the kid that just likes to go over and under the corner and write some poetry or something.
And by the way, it makes you love Punk too. Unless you're on the side of the, weaklings. It makes you love Punk too because he won't do anything. We'll go there with Mega. We'll do whatever we want. That didn't work out. He won't do anything. I'm in front of Tony. That didn't work out. Let's go back to Kenny Omega.
Maybe not the way that the boss wanted to take care of it. And I also thought of myself as a liability because I don't want to say old school. I'm not old school. I've just played a lot of contact sports and I've gotten into jiu-jitsu and boxing and mixed martial arts. I just know that sometimes when you perform or when you fight, when everything's on the line, when you give your heart, when you give your soul towards something, and you're in that moment of high stress or high anxiety, where you've maybe emptied the tank and you're just physically exhausted, that was actually very impressive. A good punish. Yeah.
He's coming on video game, obviously.
I can see that. I'm trying to agree with some things that he's saying, and he won't get to the fucking point, so I can because he's playing his fucking game.
Well, it was an impressive punish. Let's go back to this.
Whatever.
When in an environment like that, sometimes emotions get the best of you, and people will want to throw hands. And in the case, and I'm unfortunately or fortunately a believer of it, I think if it's decided that, hey, this is the best way to solve things, and you can shake hands after and move on after, I'm a believer. I'm actually a believer of fighting. I am. And that sounds terrible to say, and which is why, don't make me an EVP in 2024.
let me stop this for a second. What a turn from Kenny Omega here.
Well, yes, and by the way, I don't think that's the reason why you probably shouldn't be an EVP, but we'll go back to that. In his own melodic and florid fashion, he actually makes the same point that Punk made in his straightforward, easily understood fashion. Shit happens in pro sports. Guys get to fight. Fucking get over it or don't. Move on or don't. But why fucking not do business?
It's not even just pro sports. It's sports. It's gym classes. Whenever there's any kind of physical or athletic activity, fights break out amongst teammates. And we heard about it at the time. We talked about it. After the fight, 3 things we know happened. Chris Jericho decided to, at that moment, appear and start making a scene for himself and yelling at CM Punk. The Young Bucks got into a yelling match with Ace Steel and CM Punk, which people who were there described as being juvenile. From the Bucks. We started this, you owe us everything. Stuff like that. And we heard that Kenny Omega and CM Punk talked. And this interview here goes a lot into the mindset you would think of Kenny Omega. Okay, the fight happened. Now let's talk. So it's interesting, based on what we had reported previously, to hear him talk about this now.
Well, hold on here one second, because we had heard reported that when Punk tried to talk to Kenny, he got a notice back from whatever kind of communication, text, email, whatever, from one of the attorneys. Don't try to contact Kenny again.
Right, and that was after the fact. That wasn't the night of, obviously.
But it wasn't actually from Kenny. Do we know if Kenny said, okay, I'll talk to him, but they said, oh no, you can't talk to him?
You can't do that stuff anymore. I just feel that sometimes that's how you have to settle things. Sometimes. And I don't mean you have to settle it and then it has to be shown on screen to everyone, or people have to brag online about who won, who lost. No, it's not for that purpose. It's for the purpose of just getting that stuff out that you need to get out. And
I'm starting to like this guy. He's got a good head on his shoulders.
Why doesn't he do the promos like this on TV?
I mean, I'll admit there were a number of times, even now with me, where I thought that might have been the most appropriate answer. It never came to that. And we were able to talk things out, and we became better friends, and there was a level of respect at that point on between myself and these other parties. And maybe I'll share these stories later. It's but I always, it's crazy. As much as I believe in cooler heads prevailing, sitting down and talking, sometimes it was just like, hey, I can't even think straight until I start throwing some hay, or maybe that I need to be smacked around a little bit, whatever the case might be.
Wait a minute. Hold on. I mean, he's talking about actually getting in a fight with another professional athlete, but he makes it sound almost comfortable. Like, hey, throw some hands or throw some hay or get smacked around.
Maybe I have to get my ass kicked, whatever it may be, whatever works.
He may be able to fight. He may have trained in martial arts, but that's the thing. He just can't make himself threatening in any way of a visual or showbiz nature.
We heard he looked shell-shocked in the room, but let's go back to this.
I think if it's a contained scenario, and if it's not a situation where it's, there's like pulling people's eyeballs out, low blows, hair pulling or scratching, you know what I mean? If it's just like, hey, let's just hang and bang a little bit. Wait
a minute. I thought hanging and banging was weightlifting. That's in Hogan speak, but
yeah.
He just disqualified every locker room fight that there's ever been, or hotel room fight, or parking lot fight amongst any of the boys if he disqualified all of those things. Didn't he?
We need someone here. Who's an EVP? Kenny. Andrade just punched Sammy. What should we do? Tell them all to just go home.
Well, no, in this case, I think Kenny is thinking that maybe a referee should be appointed to when the guys start fucking fighting in the locker room, to let them know that there's no scratching and no hair pulling and no whatever, and then they'll break the holds and etc. In which case, they ought to probably show this on TV because these might be better than the matches.
I'll tell you. Let's go back to Kenny Omega. There's a little bit more here.
See it sometimes being conducive for a positive work environment. Again, this is exactly why I have no power, nor should I. So that's just how I feel, and I'm gonna leave it at that. What's my status?
Well, he's about to talk about Punk, so we'll take a break for a second. That's his thoughts on being an EVP and on the way AEW management, and you can read that as being either the Bucks or Tony Khan, dealt with everything in Chicago for Brawl Out, as we now commonly call it.
Well, the reason I think he shouldn't be an EVP is because I don't think, and this is not even a critique on his wrestling or the, sordid things in his past with the small children and the sex toys and everything, the matches with him. I'm not talking about
not
anything
to speak
else.
about any of that. No,
not to mention any of that, and just the general goofiness of him. But the fact he doesn't seem like he wants any power. He doesn't. And even if he wanted power, does he sound like when he's having a conversation like the leader of the Triple H or the Vince McMahon or the Bill Watts or the Dusty Rhodes or anybody that's the leader of men? But the basic thing is that it doesn't appear that he wants. It's sort of like the Office version of Triple H said, if they don't want the grind, we're glad we didn't get them. Cody was out there being an EVP. He was not only trying to produce his matches and help along young talent that he had found and produce other people's shit, but also you've heard him in the interviews that he's done or in the interviews other people have done about him. He was out there checking the camera angles. He was into the production. He's a guy that wanted to be in a production. He has it in his blood, and he has that drive and determination. And I don't see Kenny, out there fucking trying to be goddamn Spielberg of a wrestling program. He just wants to play his video game, and whether it's in the ring or they're sitting on the couch. Isn't that your perception of, he shouldn't have any power because he thinks that the wrestlers ought to be able to fight? They're going to anyway if they want to, so why would that have any bearing on it?
Well, again, if it's wrestling, if it's hockey, if it's basketball, whatever, teammates fight. It happens. You brought up hockey the other day. Hockey fight. The New York Rangers got a guy starting fights every 2 seconds now. It's exciting. No one's getting arrested.
Well, and so also the problem is that his friends are the ones that knew how they'd come out in the fucking fight that they didn't want to have, that they finally had because they stormed in en masse, but they were the number one and number two in the room. So they got the brunt of it, but they couldn't. And again, I laugh at the AEW fans who said, well, Punk was 0 for 2 in the UFC. And well, he was in the UFC. Which one of Maddie and Nikki is going to be able to spar with somebody to fucking train somebody for the UFC, much less be in it, for fuck's sake, much less go through the whole thing. So it's not a fair comparison to say that CM Punk was an outstanding, legendary MMA fighter. It is also as equally as ridiculous to state that anybody would think that either one of those boys, or maybe both of them at the same time, would have a chance against Punk. It's different levels of shit, right? The different levels that the kids talk about these days.
Right. And again, we saw from the Jack Perry video, obviously Jack Perry had no fear in just being a bit of a prick right to CM Punk's face, right in front of his boss. But let's go back to Kenny Omega. Here's Kenny Omega talking about CM Punk.
It's with Punk right now. Did I ever have a chance to talk to him? See, it's a Punk right now. I don't know. It's just mutual respect. We reached out to each other.
That's for teabagging me. Sorry.
Yep.
Okay, that was the guy in the room next to him yelling at the screen, not Kenny. Kenny's not teabagging him.
Is that a gaming reference?
I would assume. Now,
You're
again,
not entirely positive.
I love my video games. There are guys, like AEW's fans are different than the general wrestling fan. I play my video games, but there are people deep in it. I don't know about teabagging in video games.
All right, continue.
It's Rampage time. I don't think it.
No, it's that's the thing. It's like, it's not like, hey, we're good now. We're never bad. Honestly, if it weren't for a complete other factor, we would have been able to have that talk on the night of Brawl Out. There's no issue between him and I, as far as I know. I don't think there is at all. I don't want to seem standoffish or like secretive about what happened. Like, yes, there's legalities and all that stuff, but even if there wasn't, and this will sound weird because I've done a lot of comedy stuff in wrestling, but like, I'm actually not a huge fan of like pulling back the curtain on stuff that doesn't need to be out in public.
God.
Come on, tell me this is not him turning babyface for you.
Hold on.
No.
I'm not a fan of pulling back the curtain on the wrestling industry.
Well, let's go back beyond the curtain.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if for whatever reason guys were to fight or whatever, like, it's not for the public to know. That's just for them to air out their stuff, to get it out of their system. That's all I mean.
Well, there it is, Kenny Omega, talking about a range of topics, but very interesting answers. What do you
Sounds more clear-headed than normal about anything that I've ever heard him say. And I can't dispute that. It's sometimes it's just for guys to air out their shit, but at the same time, that one side was grossly overmatched and didn't want to air any of that shit. And, if he's saying publicly, I'm okay with, he could mention his name, but I'm okay with that other individual, or individual A or B or 1 or 2, we ought to designate, who everybody is here. Then can't the buckaroos be sitting there over in Cucamonga vibrating in their chairs when they hear this? Because they're not only losing the game, but they're also pissed off.
Again, I think right now, if you are a star in AEW and you're not actually there or on TV in AEW and you're watching what's happening, it would be hard not to make comments critiquing the people running things if you're watching things. And I believe Omega, that if it wasn't for interference from other people, if it wasn't for people yelling for Punk to be fired instantly in Chicago, that he would have been able to talk to him. And they would have been able to work together, those two. There wouldn't have been any trust issues in the ring like there were with Punk and Adam Page or anything else. And that's the kind of shit that leads to healing. I just watched that Punk Randy Orton video I told you about, of them doing commentary, and you can see the video of them together over their WrestleMania match.
Yeah.
They hated each other. They absolutely hated each other. They almost got into fight. I told you, he caught Randy Orton ripping on him to Arn Anderson, the agent. And then Arn left the room. And then Arn was like, oops, I'm out of here. And he left. And now those two are good together. They're war buddies. They got past it. To become, war buddies with someone, you have to get through the war. Can't just be like the guy who left during basic training and now thinks he's hot shit. And I think Kenny Omega, from what he's saying in his own words here, saw a path to working things out, and he had no power, and other people wanted to do things in very different ways. He also said here very casually, I wouldn't air this kind of stuff on TV. This is the week they aired that kind of stuff on TV. So there's a lot to maybe read between the lines. There are some people that think he's working. This is building towards his babyface return against the Bucks, but again, why would that be centered around CM Punk? It makes no sense.
Well, CM Punk is the axis of their world, the straw that stirs their drink. Everybody, even when they can't mention his name, now it's become the concept of him, the concept of why that the certain people at the top are fixated on him and won't drop this, and it's making them embarrassed to be part of the television program or embarrassed at that part of the program.
And, we just saw that video. And the one thing we kind of didn't talk about, remember the original reports? And I want to say Brian Alvarez was the one who said it. And obviously we now know more than ever before from the way things have worked out that he was saying a lot of the Jack Perry side of things. That Punk lunged at Tony Khan. You remember that was the specific term. He lunged at him. Not he yelled at him or he turned towards him. He lunged at him. He didn't lunge at anyone. He yelled at Tony Khan, who was standing there doing nothing. You saw Tony Khan's hand in the frame, trying to save the monitors.
The only reason that he's blocked out is because of that corner there, but you clearly see that there's a table there that the monitors were sitting on, and when Punk leans, like you do I guess a lot of people haven't been through the gorilla position, but you lean over the monitor and either yell at or communicate with the guy sitting there on the headset, and that's what he did. He leaned over and said, "This place is a joke. You're a clown, and I'm done." Blah. And there's people surrounding everyone. This wasn't a terrorist that walked in with, "I have a bomb strapped to my chest. I'm going to pull the fucking pin out." It's insane. They blew their own cover story by showing video of that the promoter lied.
He was afraid for his life. You want to tell me Chris Hero was afraid for his life? I'll believe that. I saw his reaction. He looked horrified. But Tony Khan? He lunged at Tony Khan. That was a lie. We've seen the video now. He didn't lunge at anyone. And they got put out there. Specific wording, lunged. And Tony was afraid for his life. Unless there's a second separate incident. And you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Are you saying there was a second shooter on the grassy knoll?
No, but I'm saying unless Tony and Punk got together after that and there was a separate yelling match.
No, that's never been said. No, it was there in the moment.
The point is, this is the whole thing. With everything with him, forget about him and Jack Perry, everything with him and Tony, this is everything right here, right?
Yeah.
There's no lunge. And if Tony was afraid for his life, Tony needs to stay home. Because give me a break. What was he afraid for his life? Samoa Joe would have gotten him. He was right there. We just saw what he did.
Well, wait a minute. Tony didn't know whose side Joe was on. Maybe he's thinking, "Oh shit, Joe and Punk there, they got history. He might hurt me too."
By the way, Malachi Black, we didn't even talk about him, just casually walking into the frame with drinking coffee.
didn't put the cup down. The styrofoam cup made it through this goddamn death-defying fucking all-out brawl for supremacy.
I brought up, Jim, that there are different sides of it. Let's get to this real quick because a lot of the listeners have sent it in. There are people that seem pretty secure with who they are, and there's a seemingly company-wide insecurity in AEW, whether it's about your individual performance or about the company in general. I had Collision on mute on one of the monitors in the office last night, and before I knew it, I'm like, man, Thunder Rosa's been out there on the mic for a while. Let me hear what she's saying. I pressed on mute. And it's all about, how happy she is to be in AEW and how great AEW is. So the rah-rah speeches continue. No one's putting down their pom-poms. But that's about the company. A lot of the listeners have sent in this quote. This is, Jon Moxley gave this quote. It says the source is New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Oh, good Lord.
I guess I'll do the voice. Hold on. This was before he won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship in Chicago, the new IWGP Heavyweight Champion, Jon Moxley.
Shots at the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship don't come around every day. Even if I win, it's not gonna matter. I'll be the most overlooked, disrespected, forgotten about, taken for granted wrestler in the history of the business. It's not gonna matter, but it means something to me.
So again, whatever you want to call it, the self-loathing, the insecurity. I don't know why anyone's saying this stuff out loud.
Well, I mean, he would only be overlooked and disrespected in a fair world. And as we know, life ain't fair. That's why he's on television butchering the goddamn wrestling profession with his performances every time we turn around. life ain't fair. But to come out as, oh, poor, poor, pitiful me. Overlook disrespect. How can you overlook him? You can't get him off the fucking television, and he's apparently calling all his shots because he pretty much beats everybody every fucking time he climbs in the ring. He's got Tony's fucking balls in his watch pocket. He's paid, we assume and have heard and have no reason to disbelieve, at least a few $1 million a year or some ridiculous amount.
Ridiculous.
To do something that he's not good at and is embarrassingly bad at often and looks like shit while he's doing. So,
Death Jitsu.
How can that be disrespecting someone? If you take a bum that's sleeping under an overpass and you give him a kind of a bath and you fucking put him in a ring.
Death Jitsu.
And you pay him a couple $1 million a year. And whether he's good or bad, whether the tickets sell or not, it's immaterial. How is that disrespecting somebody?
Well, you're focusing on disrespected. What about overlooked, forgotten about, and taken for granted wrestler? The most overlooked and taken for granted wrestler in the history of the business.
Well, I'm hoping that he'll be overlooked, but I can't see a case for that because he's on national television constantly, and there are other people much more talented that, as we know, are slaving away in the indies.
How do we make him the most underlooked wrestler?
But at the same point, the overlooked, the disrespected, and what was the other one of the four maladies?
Overlooked, disrespected, forgotten about, and taken for granted.
Forgotten about is where I'm hoping we can get to that point. But much like, great historical farces and or disasters of the past, sometimes these things are hard to forget. But I'm looking forward to the time that he can be forgotten about, because right now you can't forget about him because, did I mention he's on national TV making millions of dollars?
Zero fucks.
And apparently, zero fucks with his Death Jitsu t-shirt.
Yeah.
And apparently he's also feels the need to be a whiny little bitch about how fucking people with eyes and ears think he's the shits.
No one ever says, I am looked at just right.
Yeah.
That's the serious evaluator.
They got a pretty decent opinion of me. Yeah, pretty accurate. Nothing too positive or negative either way.
But this isn't the first time we've seen this, though. We saw something. It was after Matt Hardy started mouthing off about, like just blowing the Bucks in AEW. And it was about them getting their flowers. You remember that?
Oh, the flowers. Yes, give him his flowers. He's got to have his flowers, his tulips on his organ before it's too late.
But then the Bucks put out some kind of comment that it was like the same thing. Like, they won't give us our flowers till after we're gone. No one will remember how great we are. What was Moxley quote? We'll be the most overlooked, disrespected, forgotten about. Hold on, let me see the Young Bucks. How do I find them? Let me Google Young Bucks flowers.
No, you will not. Just Young Bucks flowers.
Young Bucks flowers. And, here's the quote from February 28th. From February 28th. Our success is undeniable.
What do you get when you type Young Bucks fairies?
Our success is undeniable. Yet somehow people keep denying it. No,
our success is undeniable. Simply irresistible.
Well, hold on. It actually works as a song almost. Our success is undeniable. One day we'll get our flowers. But unfortunately, they'll be at our gravesides. When you are cast as a villain, you must accept that role. But we know what we've done. We've lived it. Hate our style of wrestling, hate the way we look, hate the way we talk, that's fine. But we made a lot of people a lot of money. I bathe in the tears of yesterday's broke wrestling personalities whose only content is talking about what I did last in my backyard lazy river. So another insecure couple of guys.
He has a backyard lazy river. Well, I certainly hope he can swim.
Yeah, what's the name of that river? The River Con?
just again, the whininess and gripiness and bitchiness and insecurity, as you said, of them. And by the way, I appreciate the backhand swipe, but at the same point is, I don't have no lazy river in my backyard except the one that was already there from Mother Nature when my family got here. So that's why I'm not broke and needing you for content, Weasel. But you think they're 40 years old now. They got the lazy river in their backyard in Rancho Cucamonga. Which one do you think is driving the Lamborghini?
You know, the sad thing is they could say that. I wonder if they really believe it, because the fact is, if someone looked at the numbers, the Young Bucks clips don't do good unless CM Punk's in them. No one gives a fuck about what they do unless CM Punk's in it.
He made them famous.
They have to be stacked with someone else for anyone to care, whether it's Omega, they're trying it with Okada. When it comes to a lot of these things, CM Punk. But on their own, they get exposed time and time again. And who knows, maybe things aren't so rosy between Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. We shall see.
You know, it's terrible when these groups of high school friends that have been together all the way since their sophomore year, and here they are barely juniors, and they're fighting amongst themselves.
That's right.
That's right. Where are we going now? What's happening? These are all the weasels. That's all the weasels we needed to talk about, right? That were being weaselish in their own various way. We can talk about the billionaire now.
Yes, that's the AEW Weasel Report.
The AEW Weasel Report, and not the billionaire that you think we might mean, not the weaselish billionaire, but the prevert billionaire. Vince McMahon is now, and help me out because you're the financial goddamn guru around here with the way that the Wall Street verbiage, but he is somehow announced that he is going to sell the rest of his stock in TKO, which / the WWE. He's selling the rest of his stock. He's already sold, we think, 1.2 billion was, I think, the number we were at, dollars worth of his stock in the last 6 months or so, and now he's going to sell the rest, and he's out.
Well, someone has to buy it first, but he has all of his remaining shares, 8,021,405, up for sale. That is every share he has. He's not even keeping one ceremonial share so he can, vote, on anything. He's getting rid of all of it. That would be a clear cut from him and WWE, because there still is a tie there, obviously, and Bruce Pritchard's there, obviously. But what do you think of the idea that, once this is done, Vince would be completely out? And the other side is he's going to have all this money, and he didn't want to go in the first place.
Yeah.
Is he going to start his own company? And if he even wanted to, could it work? I mean, who would he get to work there? How could it happen?
Well, first things first. I've said with the money that he's already had, what the fuck we would be hearing if he was buying, a football team or whatever the fuck. And what else would you, just that amount of money in this short a period of time, and all in the equivalent of cash. And now how much is the rest of his, how many million shares worth? That was still like 5%, wasn't it? 5 or 6% of the company?
I think it was just under 5%. I have to double check. I don't have a value here. I have to look it up.
However, it's almost $100 a share these days. So is that 500 million? Is 800 million? However many million shares he had, is that $100 million? So that would be $2 billion closing in on money that he would have gotten in over a 12-month period. What the fuck is he doing with it? But to leap to buying his own wrestling company to compete is, maybe he's gone crazy as well as, he has been crazy for a while. Has he completely lost his grip on reality? Vince, better than anybody, knows what the talent situation is. And he also knows that A lot of these guys are tied up to the point where even if he would think in his mind, oh, they owe everything to me, they would come, at my beck and call, they would be here. He knows they're signed contracts. How would there's nobody that he would out there that he would consider a talent that he could build around, except I don't know what Brock's contract status is like, or is he for a certain period of time or a certain number of matches or whatever the fuck. But anybody else in the world that Vince McMahon would even consider building a wrestling promotion around is already signed to one or the other, are they not?
You would think so. I mean, even if it was any younger wrestler that he saw as a favorite, unless they were released, they're still working for WWE, and unless someone's going to come and offer them a much better deal, why would they consider leaving?
And say if you'd not only have to do that for a star, but you'd have to do that for a roster. And then...
Now, he would be able to staff an office. WWE's been laying off people all week from Connecticut, from Titan Tower.
Well, yeah, but you know what? They just got fired from these jobs that they've had for... they just fired Sue Aitchison. I couldn't believe that after almost 40 years. But she's... I'm sure, I don't know what her personal relationship was like with Vince, but I don't think she's at the point in her life where she wants to start a new, a new career or a new job at a new company or whatever. But some of these people have only been there a few years, but with the point is, do they want to go to work for Vince because of the publicity, the scandal, would they be associated with what kind of company is this guy going to be running now if he's in charge? That type of thing. It'd be hard to get employees. It'd be hard for him to get good publicity. But even if Vince thinks he can circumvent that because everybody would just hop to him, he knows that the talent situation is there's no way that he could field a team that could compete in any mainstream way, in any legitimate way, and I don't think he would do that. He's not just going to open a wrestling company in order to be in the wrestling business. He would only do it if he thought that he could fucking, in some way harm or diminish these motherfuckers. You got to take a market share away from them, right? Can you see Vince just doing indie wrestling? No.
No, but like you said, he is a spiteful person. And the idea that all these people took his company from him after he's the one who engaged them, and they even had Stephanie out at WrestleMania doing a victory lap. You could see it, and the personal trainer just put out some statements about how everyone turned their back on him. You could definitely see him having a chip on his shoulder and wanting to do something.
Okay, well, and I'm not saying that he wouldn't want to do something and wouldn't do it if he could. I would say that maybe he would say, well, I'll just fucking call Tony Khan and give him $1 billion. And then I've got the TV and I can fire all those guys and,
Tony
blah, blah, blah.
Tony wouldn't do it.
Tony, well, not only would Tony wouldn't do it, but also then Vince would be saying, well, but his fucking rights only go to the end of the year. What would I be buying if I'm not buying a long-term TV contract? Because some people are, well, Vince, goodbye, Tony. Well, no. I don't see a way that Vince could come. I'm not saying he doesn't want to do something in some way, maybe to get even with the WWE as it exists today, or TKO, or whatever entity he's trying to get even with. But I don't see him doing something that would obviously flop and not be effective. And I don't see how he could start his own company because of he couldn't get the people, he couldn't staff it in the appropriate places, specifically talent. But I don't know, is there a way he could get even with getting into the fucking MMA business? Does he have any kind of people that would advise him in that direction there? Because $1 billion in the mixed martial arts business will get you some fucking traction, won't it? And the way the contracts and injuries and fighters, and it's different than the wrestlers that are tied up for 5 fucking years. Is there anything to that, is what I'm asking.
I don't know.
Or is he going to start another football league and get even about that?
Oh my God. There was an article the other day, I was going to send it to you, that people were upset the Army blew a ton of money on this failing football league, and they did it because the people were blown away by the star power of The Rock. That they gave him all the taxes we pay went to The Rock's bullshit football league. I'll send you the article. We'll talk
now,
about
what?
it.
Now, wait, what?
Yeah, no, the big sponsorship, the $25 million sponsorship is tax dollars, obviously. And the league bombed like everyone said it would because no one wants springtime football from people who aren't in the NFL.
Well, but then did it work out? Did a bunch of the fucking football players then join the Army? Because,
that's not...
Well, if it worked...
That's not what they were going for exactly, but we're talking about Vince McMahon. The other issue is, even if he had the talent, and you need a top guy, and there's a plane going overhead, even if you had the top talent, if you had John Cena, and you got enough bodies that could do something for a little while you find a way to build, whatever, it's still Vince McMahon. He's toxic right now. Yeah. So unless you're going to try to sell him to the anti-cancellation crowd, who's going to want to support a Vince McMahon wrestling league unless his idea is the public will believe me when I go out there and fight this?
Well, the thing is, I can also believe that maybe Vince doesn't think he's toxic. And because the way he came back and muscled in on the goddamn sale, indicates that he doesn't think that publicity sticks to him for very long, blah, blah, blah. But I don't see him getting a warm reception from sponsors or from, networks, people who could broadcast anything. I don't see him having an available pool of wrestlers. I don't see him having a lot of goodwill with only, maybe the longest tenured WWF employees, but I see him having $2 billion fucking dollars. And what the fuck is he going to do with it? And who's he going to try to get even with it? That's the interesting part. We still don't know that. But for the first time in ever for Vince, and in 65 or 7 years of Northeast wrestling, there's going to be no McMahon involved in an ownership position.
And it's about time.
Well, these things, what goes up must come down. What must rise must fall, and what goes on in your mind is writing on the wall.
All right. We went from Blood, Sweat, and Tears to the Beatles there. A very interesting.
No, that's Alan Parsons.
You said What Goes On. I went with the What Goes On in Your Mind. Actually, that's the Velvet Underground. I went with What Goes On from the Beatles. And
well, I don't know what's going on in your mind.
What Goes Up Must Come Down from Spinning Wheel.
Well, but that's Blood, Sweat, and Tears, not Spinning Wheel.
Well, I know the name of the song.
Well, but the name of the group.
It's Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I mentioned it before. I like the first album with Al Cooper best.
Here's the problem that you've got. You're not getting a good night's sleep.
What have you heard?
I've heard you tossing and turning just on the other side of the wall, but we seem so worlds apart. But I could hear you in there, Brian. You're tossing and turning and creeping and crawling until the break of dawn. You can't sleep because you're sleeping on a sack of potatoes. You're sleeping on a moldy, lumpy old mattress. Maybe not you personally, but the royal you out there in you land and podcast land. You're out there, you're sleeping on sacks of shit is what you're sleeping on. They got lumps, they're mushy. They smell like grandma's crotch. You know when grandma was there and she was sick for that 6 weeks. The smell has never left. And it's time for you to get a new mattress, because who knows how long that dust mite infested, soggy ass fucking fart fucking cushion that you're sleeping on, face down sometimes, mind you,
Fart cushion.
has been in that goddamn bed frame or in that flop house or wherever you might be living. Even a fine person who cleans their residence and lives in an expensive home, they keep a mattress 10 years. Can you imagine the number of bodily fluids and seminal emissions and blood, sweat, and tears that have gone on that? Get rid of that. Take it out in the backyard, set fire to it. It's what you need to do. Follow your state and local fire codes. But our friends at Helix Sleep, they're going to fix you right up, because not only are they going to give you a great alternative for a better mattress involving no sacks of rocks and potatoes and bottle caps and assorted ingredients that other manufacturers use in grinding up suet to make their mattresses. No. The Helix Sleep, folks, they offer 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe Collection, the newly released Helix Elite Collection, the big and tall mattress if you're portly or porkly, if you can't put the donut down, or if you're just ridiculously, enormously tall, they've got one for you too. It's 2 feet wide, but it's 10 feet long. You ought to see this son of a bitch. And they got the kids' mattress too. So you can put the kids to sleep anytime you want, not in a veterinary fashion, but in rather a restful fashion. All on the Helix Sleep mattresses. And, Brian, you know the best part about it. They're delivered right to your door. You don't have to go out anywhere. You don't have to lay down on anything that other people have laid down upon in a biblical fashion. No. You can just order it, because all you do is go to helixsleep.com. You answer a few questions. Nothing very intrusive. You'll be asked to give your financial and personal information for the past 10 or 15 years, and what kind of mattress you like to sleep on, how you like to sleep, where you like to sleep, who you like to sleep with. That's very important. Go into extensive detail on the type of people you like to sleep with, so that they know the type of mattress that they need to send you to attract those type of people. And boom, it comes right up in your goddamn vicinity, out of the back of a truck. It's an unmarked truck. It's a panel van, actually.
No truck, no unpaneled. No, it's paneled. No truck. That's no truck.
It's not unpaneled. It's a Ford Econoline van from 1977. And they'll put the box right out on the porch, look both ways, and then run back to the truck, and they're out of there. And then you just unbox it right where you want it, and poof, it comes to life. Just poof, it comes to life. And they've been awarded the #1 mattress by GQ magazine and by Wired magazine. Even people on cocaine who read Wired magazine get good night's sleep on these mattresses. And right now, folks, if you go to Helix, Helix, helixsleep.com/JCE, and use the code HelixPartner20. You're going to get 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows. So, just by process of elimination and mathematician, let's say you order 3 mattresses, restock the whole house, including the guest room and the kids' room, and the puppies. The puppies like the kids' mattresses too. You're going to get 20% off 3 mattresses. That could be all kinds of money. And you'll get 6 free pillows. Well, you could just walk down the street handing out pillows. You'd be fixed for them in such fine condition. So, order 3 mattresses. You get 20% off everything. Give a mattress to your in-laws. Encourage them to stay in their own homes and not come visit you. And just start handing pillows out willy-nilly like a goddamn madman on the street corner. HelixSleep.com/JCE. Use the code HelixPartner20. 20% off and 2 free pillows. And Brad, you know, the mattress is like a cloud, but when you lay down your head, your weary head after your hurry-scurry, hustle-bustle of the day on these pillows, it's like you've just wrapped your head in cotton and stuck it in a fucking pill bottle of somnambulistic sleep medicine.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but it certainly is a comfortable mattress and comfortable pillows. Everything from Helix is comfortable. We have them here at Last Manor, and we encourage you to check them out only if you want a really great, comfortable bed made just for you from our friends at Helix Sleep.
And do not, also, we want to be aware of a scam going on. There's a guy going door to door, knocking on doors. He'll tell you he's from Helix Sleep. And
What are you talking
he doesn't
about?
have anything to do with Helix. What he's doing, well, basically, he's some kind of prevert, and he's trying to take pictures of women laying on their various mattresses so that he can tell them they need a new one from Helix Sleep.
That's not it. It's Helix Sleep. But, this reminds me, there's been a thing in the news recently around here, and on Long Island I saw some stories, where it's the biggest scam. These guys show up at your house, they ring your doorbell, and they say, hey, I'm a roofer. I'm in the area working on one of your neighbors. And
Oh,
I drove
yeah.
by and I saw your roof. Would you like a free evaluation? Then go up there and they fuck up your roof. And then they tell you they can fix everything they fucked up, but they don't tell you they fucked it up.
Well, and all the storm chasers too.
Storm chasers?
They're bands of roving roofing company people, and they will follow where the storms go, and they'll come immediately behind people that have obviously fucked up roofs, and they will say, "Oh yeah, we'll pay your deductible with your insurance company. Just let us do which is illegal in this state at least." And then they do a subpar job. But then they're gone in the night by the time that you know that the goddamn roof is the shits. They're not from there. They're from somewhere else, and they've moved on to the next storm. And there you go.
Well, it's always a good idea, folks, to get on your town's no solicitation list. But one more time, Jim,
Well-
Helix Sleep, you won't have to solicitate them. You'll just have to get a good night's sleep. That made no sense. But what's the promo code?
The promo code, first of all, is /JCE and use the code HelixPartner20. But secondly, I don't remember I was going to criticize you because of the point is you need the fine roof on the house. And so you need to go to the best, find the best quality, the best workmanship, the best materials. That's the Helix mattresses. So buy numerous Helix mattresses to put them on the roof of your house every time it's damaged in a storm, and you'll be fine.
If you build a Helix house for yourself, you will get a free autograph photo of Jim Cornette.
Yes, you will. Just send a photo of yourself
Several
in
photos.
the Helix house. Several photos from all angles.
And a blueprint.
Well, I'd rather just have the picture. They can be Polaroids, but every angle.
All right, Jim, well, every angle of this, we got to get out of here somehow. What's that promo code? One more time, Jim.
One more time again. Helix Partner 20 at helixsleep.com/JCE.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, after you get a good night's sleep, you know what you got to do. You got to layeth the smacketh down on a Friday night on network television for a while longer at least. And they were in Detroit, and wouldn't you know who won the pony? They were sold out again, 18 straight TV sellouts in the unfortunately named Little Caesars Arena. They've got Detroit used to be such a proud metropolitan city, and now they've got an arena named after the worst pizza in the country.
It's the most disappointing thing as a kid, because you would see those commercials on Nickelodeon. Like, man, that looks awesome, because they have a little, cartoon character, Caesar. That was all it took. And then you would have it, and it was like, this is dog shit. This isn't pizza, this is shit.
And then you would wish that Little Caesar would take that spear that he was carrying and shove it up your ass rather than you have another piece of that pizza.
See, Pizza Hut kind of lived up to the promise. Domino's, you know what you're going to get. And a certain hour, it's the right thing sometimes. But Little
Yes.
Caesars, that sucked. It was garbage.
No, at no time of the day or night should that be consumed. But and you said with Pizza Hut, it was quality pizza for a pizza that came from a hut. You had to take these things into consideration.
That you could sit down at. You don't sit down at Domino's. You don't sit down at Little Caesars.
No, you sit down in a hut. But anyway, back to Detroit. So the signs are back in the crowd. People are bringing signs again. They say, welcome to a new era.
Well, I'll stop you there. Someone, one of the listeners, I don't have his name in front of me, made a sign. He drew an amazing picture of you on it.
Me?
And he brought it. It was you holding up a CM Punk ice cream bar, and it said something like, hey, Brian, I like ice cream. I forget what it says now. But it looked really cool. It was really cool. They confiscated it right before they went on the air.
What?
Because it had a picture of Jim Cornette. And then he said the production team were all taking pictures with it.
Am I on the ban list again?
Cartoon images, at least.
Well, if a cartoon image of somebody is not allowed to be seen, are they making them take my because my face shirt is a cartoon image? We've seen the face shirts in the crowd. Are they back to making people take those off again? What is the new administration? What problem do they have with me? I've been liking them.
It says, what do the kids say, Brian? We eatin' good. And it's a drawing of you, Travis Heckel style, eating the ice cream bar. The Twitter user's name was Ghost Malone 90. And here are the tweets. Tally ho, gentlemen. Enjoy the show. It's him sitting in, it appears, the fourth row, holding up this sign, just for the camera right now.
Yes.
And then, a few minutes later, update, they took it away from me. It has Jim Cornette on it. That's in quotes. Then all of the production was taking pictures of it.
So I'm popular, but I'm to be placed in a plain brown wrapper.
Take it down. Take pictures of the evidence. Take pictures.
Now, were they taking pictures of the sign, or were they taking pictures of each other standing with the sign?
See, I don't know. We'll find that in Discovery, but I don't know now.
Oh, well, anyway, it's a new era with most of the signs back. And, but again, they've played this perfectly because the company and it makes this even better that Vince has announced he's selling the rest of his stock. He'll have no ownership. They're probably happy about that. Maybe that was an agreement, that we don't know about amongst the muckety mucks when the news of the muckety muck came out. But they baby-faced the company as a whole, as an entity for the first time in 25 years now, Brian, have they not?
They have a real chance here. They have.
And then here comes Cody and the new champion of the new era. And he's smiling and he looks professional and he gets a huge reaction. And the chance, and you deserve it. And it's got to the point where this crowd now, and obviously these crowds are bigger than they were, they won't let these top guys talk for minutes at a time. They just want to, and this wasn't, I don't think all these people are still in town or in the country from WrestleMania or decided to travel to Detroit because they were so swept up in the moment. This is just a regular crowd now. That they chant and they won't let you talk for minutes because they're following the example of the other crowds they've seen. You deserve it. Yay, you exist. You're about to talk to us. All they have to do is stand there. They have worked this brilliantly. And what do you want to talk about works now? Have you noticed that?
I'm not going with you on that.
Oh, it got a pop.
Answer it. What do you want to talk about? What's the response? If you're in the crowd, so, Jim, what do you want to talk about?
They cheered him because he said, what do you want to talk about? Because now the line, it means something. They want to hear him talk about being the new champion.
Hunger! People should just yell out topics.
Hunger! What do you want to talk about? Mathematics!
Famine!
But you had to like this promo because he quoted your all-time favorite Rhodes family promo line.
She does it better.
Well, you can't ever copy the original, but he talked about The Rock interrupting him on Raw the other night and said to quote, I guess she's from Detroit, Brandy, his wife, to quote somebody else from Detroit, who the hell told you it was open mic night, bitch?
Yeah, but you see, the thing is, he said it here. If he had said it to The Rock, it would have been amazing. But it's like, He's saying now the thing he didn't say to The Rock.
He didn't think of it until she thought of it. See, he went home and she said, you know what you should have said? He said, well, I'll tell the people the next week that what I should have said.
Yeah, okay.
All right. But anyway, what was...
If he had said that to The Rock, the place would have come unglued. If The Rock had done his thing and before... Because you never would have expected Cody to say it, and he had just said slowly, who told you it was open mic night, bitch? The place would have come unglued. I would have come unglued.
Well, we'll stick you back together and move on. Because help me out with this now. The thing that that The Rock handed to him in their hands, and he said, you'll know what this is without even opening your hand on Raw Monday night. Don't ever break my heart again, was The Rock's quote. Well, what that was, Cody says, was something that he had gifted to The Rock.
Kiss ass.
How could you get kiss ass in the palm of your hand?
When did he gift it to The Rock? When would it have been? I'm saying the fact that he gave The Rock a gift, when would that have been? A little kiss ass? When did he give a gift? When he was a rookie?
Well, didn't he say something he didn't say peace offering, but he said at some point he gave The Rock so whatever the fuck. But he ended up when The Rock returns, he's not going to be hard to find. He's going to be standing there as the champion. But we still don't know what this gift was, and it's still a little unclear. So I'd like to put a private investigator on that if we have to. But anyway, then they're going to have 2 3-ways tonight.
A silver dollar for the Midnight Rider. Because it has to be something that fits in the palm of your hand, right? It wasn't a big thing.
That would be great. Or a handcuff key.
Or a handcuff key.
Well, that fits in the palm of your hand.
Oh, okay, yeah, but it doesn't tie back to one of their family members.
Well, somebody broke somebody's heart, could have been left there all handcuffed. I don't know. But nevertheless, in the Tony Khan style of booking of the moment here that they did, they're going to have 2 3-way matches, and the winners of each one of those are going to fight at some point, and that's who Cody is going to defend the title against at Backlash at the end of April. Right after Dynasty.
In France.
In France. What time of day will that be on over here in this country?
Oui.
No, I'm fine. I just went in our last break.
Have you noticed they've stopped calling it the Universal Championship?
Yes, he's the undisputed WWE champion now. Well, wouldn't the World Heavyweight Champion somewhat dispute that?
There are some people that thought maybe Roman comes back with the other belt. Remember, he had 2 belts. Now he can come back and say, I'm still the champion, but that would kind of defeat everything, especially we'll talk about what happens here, but it appears they may be moving away from the Universal Championship.
Well, because Pluto was upset. Pluto and Uranus, and not to mention the Alpha Centauri faction that had their own champion that wasn't allowed to be in the tournament because he kept draining the opponent's blood with his tentacles.
Has there ever been a Universal Championship that has lasted more than a few years?
No. And that's why when this reign of Romans, to pun, actually went on and had length and substance, it meant something because it's first time. And still they even made up the world title, but thankfully it didn't take much, if anything, diminish Roman's reign. But every time they keep splitting this shit up, it's harder to make it more meaningful. I wish they'd quit doing it. But whether it's universal or undisputed or undeniable or whatever.
I don't want to hear that anymore either. I went from undeniable to undesirable. I went from undesirable to undeniable to unrelenting. I don't want to hear that anymore.
Well, he skipped over unreliable.
Unreliable.
No, he was never unreliable.
No, you can rely on Cody.
You could rely on him to be undeniable and indispensable and whatever. Anyway, so, but he's no longer the hunter. Now he's the hunted. He was very champion-like. If you come at the king, you better not miss. I am the undisputed WWE champion. So it was just his, after he won the title interview on SmackDown like he did on Raw without The Rock. But then, and I'll let you make other comments here after the next piece of this, though, was they go to the back and there's Paulie and Solo and Jimmy Uso, and they walk up and they do the fucking shocked face because their locker room door now has the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes sign on it. And so Paulie says, hey, winning and losing is important here. There are consequences to losing. We've got to return the title to the bloodline to get our locker room back. And that's going to be a thread that we talk about more here later on in the program. But your thoughts in closing on Cody's coming out party there as the new champion.
I really like the closing thing with Heyman and Solo and Jimmy. I thought that was good. Heyman was the star of this episode, but more about that in a little while. Thought it was an all right promo, but he said nothing. You know, all of a sudden, you know, if you come at the king, you best not miss. All right. This is going to be the real test for Cody, is after the story's been finished. What happens? Who's he going to feud with? I mean, we have no idea of any of that. They're having just matches to get an opponent. That's not a feud. That's an opponent.
Well, let's face it, it's Backlash and it's in France. And they're fulfilling some contracts, if nothing else. And I'm not knocking the people over there in French.
In French.
But it's going to be 2:00 in the morning or 10 a.m. in the morning or whatever the fuck odd time over here. This is not a major pay-per-view. They probably want him, Cody, to get a good solid win. And, you know, as the new champion in his first defense, and they're setting things up for SummerSlam and or King of the Ring. Do they do that anymore in the summertime or whatever the fuck? Summer will be a little bit bigger, but unfortunately, you know, we've come down to, well, I guess a spoiler alert here. We've come down to the two challengers that are going to meet each other, and I missed exactly when, but probably next week or something, to be the challengers on pay-per-view is going to be LA Knight and AJ Styles, which we just saw at LA Knight 1. Are they going to beat AJ twice in a row and put LA Knight against the most popular guy in the company, or are they going to go the other way and feed AJ as a heel with valid name recognition to Cody in his first defense? I think that's it, which means that AJ's got to beat LA Knight. So I don't know.
And it means we get Cody versus the Good Brothers at some point in that. So no, please no.
But anyway, and that's basically, they went to the first of the three ways, which was LA Knight versus Lashley versus Escobar. And Brian, if there's one thing I wish they'd change in the new era with the new production, the new people, whatever, they're still going, they start the match, they go under a minute, they go to the break. Could they please change that? But
they will with Raw because they'll be on Netflix. That's going to change the way they do a lot of things.
Does that mean that everybody doesn't have to do a dive in the first minute of the match?
It is going to be interesting if you're not working for the commercial break. You don't have to worry about that at all anymore. Even if they have commercials, it's Netflix. You could probably insert them wherever you want in the program. You could have matches without commercial breaks.
But besides that, if you ain't got any commercials and in one of these long matches, you got no place to grab a fucking hold, catch your breath, that might be awkward. But anyhow, the finish of this fiasco was LA Knight was about to beat Escobar, but suddenly two of the heel lucha guys just jumped in and attacked him in front of the referee because remember, it's no DQ. Lazy booking. So the referee has to stand there while these two other guys just come in and beat up fucking the babyface. And they triple powerbomb him. And then Lashley makes a comeback on the heels, but they stop him. And here come the Street Profits. And they get... Now, the only people in the ring fighting are the people not in the match. And they bump the heels out. One of them goes for a dive. And the heel lucha girl comes in and stops him. And then old Kayfabe, who's now with the Lashley faction, she comes in, huh?
B-Fab.
Yeah, she is. She comes in, old Kayfabe does. She is Fab. And she levels the heel Lucha Girl, and then Ford dives on everybody. And then the match just kept going in the ring. And Lashley speared the post, and LA Knight hit his finish on Escobar 1, 2, 3. So as a right winner, it was a rotten finish because it gets ridiculous. That every match is constant interference because of some loophole in the goddamn. Why do people who bash the territory wrestling as 15-minute headlocks, why do the same people accept this shit in every fucking match? I'd rather see a 15-minute headlock than see the same shit done over and over and over again. And by the way, they didn't have 15-minute headlocks, but you know what I mean. What do you think?
My attitude with SmackDown in general is the matches don't count. They don't matter. You get to see the personalities interact a little bit. It's about the angles and the promos. So I don't even remember anything in the match. Am I wrong? I mean, when it comes to the pay-per-views, I enjoy watching the pay-per-view matches. I watch some of the ones you skip past. But on SmackDown specifically, it seems like the main people are never in matches. If they are, it'll likely be in the last segment. And that ends before the top of the hour, so you kind of know when to pay back attention. But otherwise, I'm looking for promos and angles because the matches, they're all with the mid-card guys and none of the matches matter.
Well, thankfully, we were up to another promo and an angle. Because once we got that pesky wrestling out of the way, it was time to get to the meat of the matter. And we had Paul and Solo and Jimmy Uso come out to the ring. And Paul was very somber. And you said he was the star of the show, and boy, he was. And just every conceivable type of dislikable emotion from him. Stooginess and cowardice. But he started out serious. We've got no excuses. We blame no one. Accountability is a big deal on the island of relevancy. The tribal chief, by orders of the tribal chief, we accept responsibility for the loss of at WrestleMania. At WrestleMania 39, Roman Reigns was focused. He was on his game. Yes, Solo distracted Cody, but Cody allowed himself to be distracted, and therefore Roman Reigns beat Cody. But at WrestleMania 40, Cody flipped the script. It was Seth that distracted Roman. And after 10 years of waiting for revenge, Roman Reigns gave in to temptation.
Oh, he told that story so well. We talked about it. He told it so well.
And so he got that out. And it was brilliant. And then he starts to do the deal where he starts to wind himself up. But like the phoenix rising from the ashes, he's going to do the hype promo for Roman, right? And Solo just turns to him and gets right in his face. And Paul's reaction is priceless. It's shock. First, like you're interrupting me. And then it's puzzlement and perplexion. Like, why is this happening? And then it's almost like nervousness. Like he starts trembling. Like, what are you looking at me for? And then Solo starts talking. And he says, winning and losing does matter. And there are consequences to that. And consequences mean change. And Paul gets scared like he's going to fucking spike him or something. He starts backing up. But Solo's looking at Jimmy Uso. And Uso, like, what are you looking at me for? And they have a face-off. And Uso's like, what, blah, blah, blah. But then Solo goes for the hug. He spreads his arms out. Give me the hug. So they hug. And Solo says, you're my brother, and I love you. And then he turns away, and boom, Jimmy gets attacked from behind by a guy in a hoodie. I'm telling you, all these thugs and enforcers and hired assassins and attackers, they all shop at the same sporting goods location. But in this case, boom, when he levels the boom on, or lowers the boom on Jimmy Uso, he reveals himself to be Tama Tonga. And I know that he's been in New Japan for some time, wrestling in Japan. He's never been on American television that I am aware of. The people popped, but I think, did they pop because here's another Samoan that took his fucking hoodie off? Or do that many people know potentially who Tama Tonga is?
I'm not quite sure, but they did pop, and it stood out.
Pop.
Now,
Yes.
again, a lot of people may have been expecting, well, shouldn't say a lot of people. Again, it's Detroit. It's not a WrestleMania audience. But the expectation of Jacob Fatu is imminently going to be on TV may have caused people to think momentarily it was that. You know, CV Offie got a big pop when people only heard the word Superfly and they screamed for that. And then they saw that's not Superfly Snuka.
Well, but I mean, Jacob Fatu at this point is still in the same position. The same audience would know him as no Tama Tonga. It's the same level of fame in the wrestling business.
That's the other thing. Tama Tonga has been a star in New Japan. I think he was a member of the Bullet Club, right? Like the early days before it became watered down. He's Haku's son. Not that anyone there would know that if they don't know him, but maybe the Detroit audience has some people there who know New Japan. But it was a surprise, and it was the debut of someone who they immediately treated seriously. You know, Solo got over quick with the Bloodline. So obviously they're going to try right away. Well, I'll let you finish talking about this whole segment.
Well, I just wonder why then, how if when Jacob Fatu comes along, Lord, I hope he just didn't get a favor job because he's a member of the family, but that they plan to showcase, because Tama Tonga, he looks great physically. He's in great shape. He looks much better than either one of the Usos. But I can't imagine, you may have seen him. I haven't really seen that much of him. He can't be better than Jacob Fatu.
No.
In this role or capacity.
No, and that's not to put him down in any way. It's just Jacob Fatu is someone who stands out a little more than the average wrestler with his look and certainly the things he could do with his size and his look.
So I wonder how many times a hooded fucking Samoan guy going to come in? Anyway, nevertheless.
It gives you that interesting dynamic, because if you're going to assume that Jimmy is now on an island unto himself, unless he... Well, it almost looks like he's probably going to have to end up back with his brother somehow, but we'll see. But you also get the opportunity here to do Bloodline versus Bloodline.
Well, that's what I got the idea when... and we'll finish this segment, but it's almost like they're setting up some kind of potentially positive Bloodline faction versus negative Bloodline faction.
Hey.
But when... Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I'm fantasy booking, but The Rock got into Solo's ear. And he said, we need to get that belt back. We need to get rid of the dead weight.
Yeah.
And Solo did something behind Roman Reigns' back. I mean, you saw Heyman's reaction. He hit the phone out of Heyman's hand.
Well, that's what I was about to get to. When Tama Tonga attacked Jimmy, you thought, okay, Solo doesn't want to beat up his brother, but then Solo turned around and spiked him about a half a dozen times, and Heyman was mortified. And then when Solo turns to Heyman and starts to walk toward him, Paul's like, no, please, oh God, no. And he just brings him out to raise the fingers, right? Okay, we're the ones. Paul raises his phone and tries to say, call Roman Reigns, and Solo snatches the phone out of Paul's hands and stomps it, and then puts the chair over Jimmy's head and says, I love you, and then gives the ass blast to the chair that's around his head.
While Paul is screaming for them to stop.
No. So in this case, is Roman's Bloodline faction going to be the babyface Bloodline faction to save the day from the heel Bloodline faction? And we wonder which direction that little weasel Heyman's going to try to lean.
Listen, Roman Reigns lost control of the Bloodline. What's he going to have to do to get it back? Solo, Tama Tonga, whoever is in charge of them, whoever their tribal chief is. I'm going to have to call Jacob Fatu. I'm going to have to call my crazy cousin. I'm going to have to get the craziest of us all, Jacob Fatu. Because then you have a weird dynamic because, again, none of them look like Jacob Fatu. None of them have the same aura as he does. And you can bring up, if you wanted to, it's a different ownership now. He's got a record. Like
Yeah.
You don't have to convince people he's a badass. It's very easy to see.
There's documents.
Yeah.
There's documents and he doesn't look clean and he doesn't look like the typical WWE, the Usos and even Solo to be a street fighter. He's got clean fucking gear on and he's got a clean white tape on his thumb. When Jacob comes in the gimmick that I saw him in MLW, his fucking feet are taped because he's barefoot, but his feet are taped up in dirty fucking tape and he's got the fucking facial hair and he's fucking dripping with sweat. And he's got a crazy fucking look and the tribal outfit. And, it's a different aura. Like you said, he gets over, well, like the next guy we're going to talk about here in a minute, Braun Breaker. He gets over people that see him cold like that.
So that could be an interesting dynamic. Again, they'll probably go in a different direction. They usually have this stuff. They have their own ideas, obviously. But The Rock.
Well, now they've heard some good ones, so they can change.
The Rock with Solo and Tama Tonga, and he could say to Tama, "Look, I got your dad a car. I filmed it. You may have seen the video. You have to be on my side." Against Roman, the Usos won't work with him. They'll get along with each other, but they don't want anything to do with him. He doesn't know if he could trust Heyman because Heyman loves the star power of The Rock. And Roman has no one to turn to. Huh.
Yeah.
You know what? This is why it's been so good. Because we've been talking about this kind of stuff with the Bloodline for a few years where you keep trying to guess where they're going to go next. And the only bad thing is sometimes it feels like they really take their time to get there. But what an interesting way to deal with everything coming out of WrestleMania with no Roman, no Rock.
So we'll make our own Romans and our own Rocks, because next up is our own Breaker. And I'm just going to take 1 second because there's nothing to review here. Braun Breaker versus Cameron Grimes. But except that they know how to debut and or push in the early stages a fucking star. Braun Breaker works with Cameron Grimes. They've used Grimes in the past. They've not used him. He's won some. He's lost some. He's been up and down. He can work. You recognize him. Braun Breaker comes in. Look at this fucking guy. You know he's somebody you're supposed to fucking look at. They tell you he's somebody you're supposed to fucking look at. He sells and or reacts a little bit to Grimes' stuff in order to foil that and come out on top of a few things and then spear him out of his boots and pin him 1, 2, 3 in 2 minutes. And he got over like a star. It was perfectly done. If this had been AEW, they wouldn't have Braun Breaker because they wouldn't sign a fucking giant Greek god-built athlete that can do everything. They would sign a fucking gymnast that's been on the indies for 15 years. But he would have gone out there on AEW television and tried to have a banger for 15 minutes with somebody, and he'd look like everybody else. This is the way you debut, and or as I said, in the early stages of a guy's push him, and he needs to be doing this every few weeks for a little while, and it'll be just fine. But I mean, can you see anybody on in the wrestling business right now that is a more can't miss prospect to be the WWE champion that has not already been the champion?
Beyond like Anna Jay or someone like that?
Oh, come on now.
I think Braun Breaker, clearly. I mean, the other thing is, it's cool when someone gets you excited to see the simple things or what you think of the simple things. Like Jim Brunzell did a drop kick and it was so great you couldn't wait for the moment in the match
Yes.
where he would finally hit it. With him, I just want to see him run the ropes at least once.
Yes, it's a high spot for him to run the ropes. It's amazing. But anyway, so that was just another example of they know what they're fucking doing when they apply themselves to make a star. And then we had an in-ring promo with Bayley, and according to the fans, she deserves it too. And this is going to be a theme. Apparently, the fans think everybody deserves everything. But she did a babyface promo about how much being champion means to her and how the fans have always been with her and on her side and got her through everything. Wasn't she a heel for a while? Quite a while?
Yeah. She was the leader of Damage Control for quite a while.
Yes. Well, then apparently she was a rotten heel because the fans never left her when she turned. But anyway, she's doing that, and then here Tiffany's music plays, and here comes Tiffany Stratton. And she accepted the open challenge that Bayley hadn't got to yet, because she anticipated that she was going to make that. And then Bayley said, well, I wasn't going to make an open challenge. I was going to challenge somebody specific, Naomi. And here came Naomi. And then Naomi took off her robe for some reason and recited a memorized response to what had just happened and wanted to fight Tiffany, so we got Naomi and Tiffany. And it went through 2 whole segments, and Naomi won with a jackknife, 1, 2, 3. I thought Tiffany was the next big project they were pushing. They just beat her with a fucking roll-up.
We'll see what happens. I thought Tiffany was good on the mic here, too, actually.
I know actually, she is an effective heel because that voice and delivery annoys me. Because she is the oral, as in AURAL, oral representation of every one of these wind tunnel, brainless girls that want to get into wrestling business to me.
You think they're going to turn to Naomi?
Why would they turn? Tiffany's a heel, is she not?
Didn't
She's
you say
gotta be.
She beat Tiffany? She gets the shot at Bayley. No,
Well, that's true. Oh, I didn't think that far ahead. Well, goddamn, maybe she. Well, I thought she was friends with Jade and Bianca, Naomi.
Where were they? They were hanging out in the back.
Yeah, they're coming up here in a minute. Are they all going to turn, or is she going to turn her back on them? Or if she turns her back on them, who's she going to turn to?
This isn't all friends. You could be just friends with certain people and do your own thing. But I don't know. Maybe we're overthinking that. We've never gone this long talking about one of these segments.
No, so we'll stop now. Logan Paul did a promo on his phone and put himself over, and he's a great heel. And then we saw Jade and Bianca versus Chelsea and Piper, and Jade beat Chelsea to very little surprise.
What are your thoughts on the way they've used Jade so far? Just like AEW. I mean, AEW gave her a push to the moon, but very short matches where she looked impressive, but didn't necessarily just work a match the way you work a 15-minute match or something. Here, short burst where she's looked impressive, 6-person match at WrestleMania, and now here in a tag match with Bianca. Is it kind of like what they did with Junkyard Dog, trying to hide any of the things missing in the ring right now, in her case, just because of lack of experience?
Yes, and it's obvious, and that's what they should be doing, and it's working because now there was, oh God, I can't remember. Before she hit Chelsea with her finish, she did something that it didn't particularly look just great, and that's really the only bobble that you've seen from Jade physically in the ring in these few matches that she's had, because they've laid everything out, planned everything out. And that's what you've got to do with somebody that can be an attraction because of their striking look, but doesn't have the experience or the training yet to be able to go out there and just wing it, which is why, not to get off topic, but Ronda Rousey's out whining and bitching. Well, They let Logan Paul rehearse all the time, but they didn't let me rehearse. We rehearsed my first match for 6 weeks. Goddamn, I could have had her first match with 6 weeks to rehearse it. But then she said, but now, because Logan Paul's more important than she was, because she was a fucking attitude issue and didn't give a shit whether she was there or not. But the thing is, with somebody with a striking look or a promo or some type of visual something, you got to be able to get them something they can walk through so as not to expose their weaknesses. And that's what they're doing with Jade, and that's what they should be doing. And the reason why that her weaknesses were sometimes exposed, or it was just a meaningless 6-minute match in AEW, is because they didn't know how to push a star, but they just wanted her not to lose. But I think they're doing the right thing here, to answer your question. So in the back, here's another thing I like that they're doing. I don't necessarily like that they make fun of their own thing, but so Byron Saxton, Byron Saxton.
Byron, he's in the back.
Yes, he's in the back. Byron in the back was in the back with Kevin Owens, who was back behind him. And what they did was, the production of the thing, the way they did it was, instead of just having the camera follow the guy walking to the ring for the main event or whatever, Owens took the microphone from Byron Saxton and starts cutting his own promo. And as he walks by the desk there with the monitors, he takes a Detroit Tigers title belt so he could pander to the audience. And he makes fun of the people walking to the ring shot by talking about it while he's doing it. And at least they're doing new stuff with the production, is where I was going with this. It's not just the same old stuff. Boy, is anybody missing Kevin Dunn? Not a fucking soul. But nevertheless, we've got Kevin Owens versus AJ Styles versus Rey Mysterio. And I swear they did it. I know they did it. I saw them do it. They only had 10 minutes on the air when the match started, and they still went to a break in less than a fucking minute. So I just want to know what's going to happen. On Fast Forward, it looked like they did a lot of stuff, and I bet it was very exciting. But finally, Ray hits the 619 on AJ, but Owens hits Ray with a stunner, which knocks him off the apron, which looked kind of cool. Stunner on the apron, and he flies off of it. And then Owens swantoned AJ, but AJ got his knees up. And then AJ went up to the top because he was going to come off on Owens, but Ray caught him and tried to Hurricane Rana him. But AJ held on, and Styles clashed Rey Mysterio off the ropes on top of Owens, and then rolled Ray up and pinned him 1, 2, 3, which was a snazzy fucking finish. I'm glad I wasn't, I've been glad I wasn't Kevin Owens since the day I met him, but I'm glad I wasn't him in that predicament. It looked a little stiff. And then LA Knight comes to the ring and gets in AJ's face. So I'm, like you said the other day, apparently AJ and LA are not finished with their brouhaha. That was SmackDown. That was the main event. What'd you think about that main event?
I really didn't care.
Yeah, there you go.
It's all about the angles and the promos. And, unfortunately, as soon as the Bloodline segment was done, it's one of those episodes you got the vibe they're not coming back at the end. So, I had it on, but my interest was gone because all the top guys were gone.
But you know what, Brian? You know what the shame of it all is that your interest shouldn't be gone because there's so many other things to be interested in. There's new things going on in the world. Did you know, were you aware of this? The breaking news that there is a new DraftKings app out right now. They're an official partner of the NBA, by the way. Is that the National Boxing Association?
Basketball.
Oh, the National Basketball, an official partner of theirs is DraftKings, and they've got a new app.
Is that
And
boxing?
you don't just come out with, say again?
Nothing.
You don't just come out with apps every day, Brian. Most people are aware of that. It takes a lot of pride and a lot of preparation, a lot of work to just send out an app out alone into the cold, cruel world. Well, they've got a new app called Pick 6. It's the newest fantasy app from DraftKings, and it's all about the NBA players and what they do or don't do. Now, for example, it's very simple, Brian. I'm going to explain this to you.
Please.
Now, what you do is you download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app. I assume everybody out there knows how to download an app. Does everybody out there know how to download an app, Brian?
Everyone except the person talking about it right now. Yeah.
Well, I was hoping they did. That's why I was hoping you'd say yes. Then I don't have to try to explain it. But just get there and do that. And they do it now. It's what it says in capital letters right here. Download that sucker now. Do it now. And like it with a smile.
Obey.
But you use the code JCE when you do that now, too. Right now. You sorry sons of bitches. Download it now and use the code JCE and take on the competition with the, I don't think you get a deal, apparently. You don't really get a deal because you're going to win a lot of money anyway. So just use the code JCE just because that's kind of like
you're going to win a lot of money anyway?
That's like your secret knock, the code JCE. You don't get a discount because the app is free. And I don't see them giving you extra betting or anything here. Just download that goddamn app now. DraftKings Pick 6. That's what they want you to do.
Extra betting?
Well, normally if you bet $10, they give you $150, or I see none of that. It just says pick your favorite players and compete for huge cash prizes. Well, what you do is you select if a player will have more or less of a stat. For example, will a player have more than one rebound? Well, he better, elsewise they ought to kick him off the fucking team. Lousy fucking. Or will a player have less than 3.5 assists? Now, how do you get credit for half an assist? Is there another assister assisting you?
Yes.
In your assist?
Sure.
Okay, well, anyway, if that happens, if you select those things and that happens, then you win money. And if you pick your favorite players and compete for huge cash prizes. So you're going to get rich on this. It's pretty much a given.
No, it's not a given. And there's no promises or guarantees involved. And you're probably...
No, but the chances are...
Not probabilities either. That's probably a bad idea as well.
Chances are, though you lost all your money, you were the only one and everyone else won a lot of money. But if you download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now using the code JCE, you'll get, I guess, nothing but a trip to the poorhouse. But you take on the competition with your best NBA player picks. Only on DraftKings Pick 6 with code JCE, where you try to figure out if these assholes are going to have more than 1.5 rebounds or more than 3.6 illegitimate children or whatever the statistics are. And the crown is yours, folks. Brian, do we have Styles Bitchley queued up with that disclaimer notice?
Now, that's not Styles Bitchley. We played this last time. You surprised me with this, but it is in fact not him.
It's not. I thought it sounded just like him before he got that deviated septum repaired.
Before his balls dropped. No, it's, or after, I guess this would sound like. But no, this is not him. This is...
Well, now, what is it, before balls or after balls?
Well, this person here is our new booth announcer. His name's Frank.
I thought his name was Balls.
Let's go to Balls's... he's Frank Balls.
My name's Balls. You got any?
Frank Balls. Let's go to Frank Balls' disclaimer.
Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 18 and over in most eligible states. Age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. Pick 6 not available in all states, including but not limited to Connecticut and New York. For up-to-date list of states, visit dkng.co/pick6states. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
There it is. How do you feel now?
Much better. That gave me a chance to take a quick piss. I've got a mayonnaise jar over by the side of the chair here, so I didn't have to get up.
Oh, there actually is a podcaster I've once worked with who used to want to piss at his desk. I won't go into it now on the air, but it's a story for the...
Is that the same one that used to drool on people?
No, actually, it would probably surprise people.
A completely different one?
It's a completely... it's a long story for another time.
All right. Well, speaking of all these stories and the people who tell them on the Arcadian Vanguard Network, what the hell's going on over there this week?
All the usual shenanigans on all the shows on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, and information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook at facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A few notes, of course, on behalf of Jim, myself, and all of Arcadian Vanguard, congratulations to Dwight Gooden on having number 16 retired by the New York Mets. We all want to send out this greeting to him here today. Of course.
Well, who was number 16?
Dwight Gooden.
And why did Dwight Gooden have him retired? Did he piss Dwight off?
No, it was his number. They're retiring his number.
No, you said Dwight Gooden had number 16 retired. That means that number 16 got on the bad side of Dwight Gooden, and Dwight Gooden said, motherfucker, it's either him or me, and they fired or retired number 16.
No, in sports, when you retire someone's number, I said they're retiring his number 16. He was number 16.
Oh.
It was the number on his back, and now it'll be on no one else's back ever again for the New York Mets.
Well, they didn't need to retire his number. I had his number as soon as he walked in the door.
Of course, you can get all the news, all the happenings, all the whatever the hell we're talking about here today. Everything happening in the world of wrestling on the Wrestling News. No opinion, no conjecture, no hijinks like we have over here. Just the Wrestling News.
Yeah, it's so dry. You got to listen to it in the rain, folks.
Get information, of course, or get the show directly from thewrestlingnews.com or wherever you find your favorite podcast.
Don't get the information on the show. Just listen to the show. If you get the information on the show, it'll make you not want to listen to the show.
You will want to listen to the show. And of course, you can listen to that show, thewrestlingnews.com or Arcadian Vanguard's The Wrestling News, wherever you find your favorite podcast. Again, every day, free, no opinion, no conjecture, just the news. Get the Wrestling News Morning Newscast. Want to make mention of Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam. They're still looking, of course, at 1984, 40 years ago. Check it out.
They're still doing it?
Well, it's going to be going for a while, just like we're going to be doing it here shortly on the show.
I understand it lasted almost a year, 1984.
We'll hear more about that and so much more. McAdamPod.com, or look for Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And, of course, the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership! I'm regretting having the window. It's getting hot and the sun's out now.
Yeah, and all your neighbors think that you're screaming for a spaceship to come and land.
Oh, they can't hear me over here. I don't even have this all tuned up like I should. But anyway, go through the archive, 605pod.com, or available wherever you find your favorite podcast, The Mothership. And stay tuned for something, stay tuned. The 605 Super Podcast. Oh, and I missed. The Mothership.
It's a mother of a ship, all right. Well, so McAdam and his partner Pod over there, what is it, McAdam Pod Show? The McAdam Pod Show?
McAdamPod.com is the website.
Yeah, well, who's Pod? I know McAdam.
Well, actually, no, he does a show with Steve Generelli. Steve's his partner on the show. Pod is
generally he does the show with Steve, but does he always do it with Steve, or sometimes there are other people besides Steve?
Generally it's Generelli and the other people who Jeff Baldwin was just on the show. I know that.
Well, nevertheless,
does this answer your question that you bizarrely had?
No, they're stealing my shit. They're doing 1985. I was involved in 1984. Why, was McAdam even born in 1984? Yeah, I guess he's an old fart. I know Baldwin's goddamn older than dirt.
Oh, you stop it. Leave him alone.
But nevertheless, they're stealing my stuff. We're about to tell the people, the Cult of Cornette audience out there, that we've got another one of our award-winning, and by cracky, it will win an award as soon as somebody nominates it for one. Our award-winning segments on my life history from 40 years ago. We've done much of 1983. Now we've started on 1984. We're in Mid-South Wrestling, and we've been going through and talking about my individual dates, the formation of the Midnight Express, the march to the top of Mid-South Wrestling, all that good stuff. And they're stealing my shit over there, doing it on their podcast, is what you're telling me now.
Well, they're focusing more in the Northeast, not Mid-South Wrestling.
Oh, staying far away from me, eh?
Well, it's a national
Well, that's
expansion.
a good thing.
Well, technically, they'd be near you because it's a national expansion, but it's coming out of the Northeast.
Well, most national expansions come out of the Northeast. That's why they call them nor'easters. See, I learned that in meteorological school.
That's not why they
Anyway, what we are going to do today is go to a conversation that you and I recorded a few days ago when we had the opportunity of not talking about the modern wrestling and go back and pick up of our discussion of my schedule in Mid-South Wrestling. The folks they can go to the YouTube channel, probably the easiest thing, and bring themselves up to date if they'd like on, I think, Jim Cornette on his schedule, October 1983, November, December. It's dated like that, isn't it? Or is it? You know better than I do.
It is. Yes, it is.
Well, there you go. So just Jim Cornette on his schedule, and then these things pop up, and we are up to February 1984. 40 years and, 2 months ago of what I was doing and how the business was in Mid-South and et cetera. Have I introduced this segment appropriately, or have I left anything out?
I think you've got it summed up pretty well.
Well, in that case, without further ado, let's go to the VTR replay of the conversation that you and I had a few days ago that has not been heard by the audience of my schedule and associated riots and ribs and road stories of 40 years ago in Mid-South Wrestling. Well, and ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another segment of 40 years ago in the life of Jim Cornette and the transition to Mid-South Wrestling. And Brian, we last left off, we were just about to start February, and February the 1st was a Wednesday, and that meant we were back in Shreveport, not only for our regular morning interview session from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., where we did all the local promos, but a TV taping that night of 2 different Mid-South television programs that would air around the territory for the next several weeks. And we're right in the middle of the feud with Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA. And on the first tape that we did that night, just by my notes, they recapped the belt whipping where we had, at the previous taping, taken my belt off of my suit and whipped the shit out of the baby faces. And they did an interview. And then on the second tape of the night, we had a match with a couple of job guys, but I warned Bill Watts he's starting to overreach himself because he's starting to fine people for, like, when we ran in on 2 and TA, and we hit the ring again on Wrestling 2 this night and rip his mask trying to take it off. And so we're just at maintenance for the angle that we've got ongoing, because the good parts are still to show in some of the major towns. And that, again, a long day. We start, even though we were already in Shreveport, we had been in Monroe the previous night, so went over and got a room. We start at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you don't get back home until, past midnight. And then the following day, February 2nd, we were in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, which is almost to Little Rock. So it's like a 500-mile round trip for a fucking, again, this is a spot show. We wrestled Lanny Poffo and Brian Adias, who must have been on loan for the month from Fritz. That's the thing. Fritz sent him talent. Well, let's send him Brian. And I mean, they did $13,000 in Pine Bluff on a spot show, which in today's money, as we've mentioned before, 3-1. So that would be what, $39,000 for a spot show in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. We made $200 for a preliminary match, but goddamn, that's a long day, right? And then we get back to Alexandria the following day. We're in Baton Rouge, and this is the first time we've been in Baton Rouge for an angle match with 2 and TA. So in this one, remember, we'd been doing the board thing. I think they got somewhat sympathetic to Bobby Eaton's fucking head. And when Magnum's doing his comeback, he gives Dennis a belly to belly, which was his finish back even then. But the referee is trying to put Wrestling 2 out of the ring, and I give Bobby the powder, and he fucking throws it in TA's eyes. And the referee turns and sees the cloud, and we get disqualified. But then Magnum is blind, and we get two down, and we leave him laying in the ring. And this one, Brian, was when, I guess I haven't mentioned that for the first 4 weeks or so that we were there, and when we started doing these, well, we didn't do it the preliminary matches. When we started doing the angle matches, I didn't carry the racket back from the ring. Either Bobby or Dennis did, at their suggestion. Have I mentioned this to you?
I remember you saying that Dennis used to hold the racket sometimes, and then I think you said he was afraid he was going to kill somebody, so he gave it to you or Bobby.
He gave it to Bobby. And then this was the night that I got back possession of it. Because here's the deal. When we had started doing these angle matches for a couple weeks previously, and I started seeing in the thing in Houston and everything, I see, you know what? I need to load this racket up, right? That's the first time I had the thought, I need something besides the racket. But since they were taking the racket, I still wanted something, right? So I had gone, and you could get this. I don't know how easily you can get it these days, but remember, every woman used to have a fucking spray thing, a mace in her purse, right? Pepper spray.
Right.
Well, I got me, if one of the boys, and the reason why Dennis had said on the way back from the ring, the deal was Dennis would go in front, he'd have the racket, so he's got a weapon. He wanted me to stay behind him and keep my hands on his shoulders so he could know I was there without having to turn his head and look for me. And Bobby would get right behind me and make sure to watch my back because I was probably going to be the target. But that way, we're tight. We don't let any room get in between us. And if the cops are willing and they're there and they surround us, then that's the way we're going to go back through. Well, that was, like I said, for a while, but I still wanted something. So I got the fucking pepper spray just in case, right? Because I could put it right in my inside jacket pocket. Well, this is the night. After this match, and we leave the fucking heels laying, and the goddamn cops get around us, and we're in the formation that I talked about. And goddamn, about halfway back, once we get through ringside, the people can start running up from the sides. And somebody came up and goddamn clocked Dennis. Bam! And turned around and started running the other way. Well, Buddy Landell was watching because he was riding with us. He was watching from the entryway and trying to see what was going to happen to see if we need any help. And when he saw that, he took off running for the guy. So it was like he was going to intersect him. The fan had punched Dennis and turned around and was running one way. Buddy was running in the other direction from the entranceway to tackle him. And Dennis took off running for the guy the same way, so they fucking got to him at the same time. Buddy was broken field running through all these people on the floor, tackled the guy, and spun him around with his arms behind his back like he was going to hold him for the cops. And Dennis got there and fucking crowned him with the tennis racket. And what I had done to the tennis racket was I had taped a large dog's choker chain around the outside edge of it. And I had taken 10 snips and I had cut a metal, like a cookie sheet, in the shape of a tennis racket and pushed it in and put the cover over it and duct taped that all together. So it not only had some heft to it, but it would sting if you hit it sideways, right? Because I would hit the guys flat, but you'd hit a mark sideways. Well, what Dennis did was he hit this guy flat over the head with it, but so hard that when he drew it back, it looked like a goddamn kitchen cooking pot. It had bent in the shape of this guy's head. And so when we got back, oh, and by the way, that's when I lost my goddamn pepper spray also. Because when Dennis took off to hit the guy over the head with the goddamn racket and Buddy had tackled him, Bobby got in a skirmish with somebody, and a guy came up and tried to punch me, and I slipped it, and I grabbed his fucking shirt collar, and I had the fucking mace in my hand, and I stuck it up in front of his face and said, I will make you wish you were never born if you don't get the fuck out of here. And he turned around and run off, and somebody goddamn blocked my hand, and the mace flew in the crowd. And then the cops we finally get everybody back, right? And that's when Dennis said, I'll kill somebody. Don't. But that was Baton Rouge at the Centroplex. And that was where later on in the year, the guy would take a swing at me coming back, and Dundee'd get on him and drill him. And that would lead to that lawsuit I told you about that one time where Dundee couldn't go back to Baton Rouge for a couple months because nobody knew who he was. He was the booker, so he wasn't advertised. Cops didn't know who he was. He was the unnamed co-conspirator.
With an Australian accent.
Well, they didn't hear him talk. But anyway, nevertheless, so that was Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Jimmy Kilshaw was the local promoter. The guy with the fucking carbuncle on his neck or whatever. And he had been involved with wrestling since the 50s or 60s. And in Baton Rouge, state capital, he knows who to pay off. That's why I was told that we had to run Laranja, No, was it Laranja or Homa? We had to run Laranja because somebody there was politically connected over in Baton Rouge and could make sure we could get the Centroplex. I don't know what the fuck was going on down there. But anyway, we did a $14,000 house, which was closing in on 2,000 people and had been better than they had been doing. And as a matter of fact, then the following day, we went to Laranja, Louisiana. And we were in the main event there at that shitty building. That's the place where the locker room may have been 10 feet long and 6 feet wide, and the floor had to have boards put over it because it was always so wet and dirty you couldn't walk on it. And then you would go out the locker room door, and you'd be in the arena and turn right and go out into the parking lot, and the parking lot was mud. And generally, you'd rather change clothes in your car than, if you had room, than to actually be in the locker room. But the guy that ran this town, they wouldn't take, when they would take an intermission in the middle of the night, they wouldn't start the show again until the guy had sold enough shit from the concession stand. And I'm not talking about food. He had a goddamn flea market in this building. They sold cakes. I saw him sell a fucking shotgun one night. They sold fucking car parts. It was like there was a flea market section in this building. The Laranja, goddamn, what was it, maybe rec center, whatever. And the only reason this guy had wrestling was to get a crowd in there to buy his shit. And some point, we're wanting to fucking leave so bad. Goddamn, ring the bell. Start this show. Let us get the fuck out of here. When he'd have an auction, some of the guys would start bidding on shit to see if he'd make enough money to start the show again. And that was the ring was not only as hard as the floor, but the ropes weren't even wrapped. Have you ever seen a wrestling ring with just naked ropes?
No.
Well, you did here. And Grizzly Smith called a finish one night where Hacksaw Duggan would give me 2 body slams in Laranja on that ring. And so we get in there and Duggan picks me up for the first one, and I said, 1 slam. And I'd already told Hercules Hernandez, hit the goddamn ring as soon as he slams me. Don't let him slam me again. But anyway, here against 2 and TA, we were disqualified because Bobby jumped off the top rope. And we got out of there because it was goddamn Laranja. And that is remember what you were talking about where they sent Precious back to the locker room because the crowd was too dangerous? After we were in Laranja on February the 4th, that was a Saturday night that they had to take up with that fucking town. It did $8,300. So there was 1,000 people or a little more in this goddamn barn on the side of the road. And we made $150, and then we drive to Baton Rouge. We got to get a hotel room because the next afternoon, Sunday afternoon at 2:00, we're 100 miles away in Galliano, Louisiana. And it's the Midnight Express, and it's just a spot show, off-topic match, Midnight Express versus Junkyard Dog and Magnum TA. No fucking angle between us and Dog, otherwise than obviously we're mad at TA, right? That's the main event. They had Chris Adams and Jimmy Garvin, and I think like 2 or 3 other matches. And it was just a spot show. And again, this little recreation center they put, Galliano, Louisiana, is a fishing village on the south end of Louisiana near the water. Obviously, they're fishing. They're on the water, on some of the swamps and the bayous. And there's one road in and one road out of this town. And we get there and we find this place is sold out. $10,800 house, which in today's money, again, it'd be over 30 grand. There's easily 1,000, 1,200 people packed in this place on a Sunday afternoon. And we were told once we got there, by the way, it is a fishing village. All these people are drunk and have been drunk since Friday night. What? They come in off the boats on Friday night and they start drinking. This is what the cops are telling us. I mean, this is not some goddamn program vendor. The police that are in the building are saying they come in off the boats on Friday night. They fucking start drinking. They go to church on Sunday morning. This is the goddamn last thing they're going to do. They're going to go to sleep tonight and they're going to go back out on the fucking boats. So mind your P's and Q's type of thing. Because every single one of these people is raging drunk. And as soon as we saw the first match, the reaction we're watching from the locker room door, right? Jimmy Garvin got a good look at it. And later on, Dundee comes in the locker room and says, okay, Jimmy, you have your match, shine him up a little bit, then get some heat on him. And Jimmy said, get what? You expect me to get heat out there? What the fuck's the matter with you, Bill? He wanted to just have Chris beat him up and then do the finish, right? So they go out there and just on the entrance, so many of these drunk guys have grabbed Precious's ass and try to pull her sweater off and pulling at the boa and the fucking perfume sprayer. Jimmy takes his shit off, gives it to her, and it tells the cops, wait, she's coming back with you. And sends her back because there was only like 3 or 4 feet between the ring and the front row. And it's like a place you'd play recreational basketball in a town, right? It's that type of place. So it's tight. And so then I'm supposed to go out there and Dundee said, well, just do a DQ. Get the heat on fucking, once again, we're saying get the heat, but get the heat on fucking Dog. And then give Magnum the tag so that he can roll Bobby up and just throw Magnum over the top rope. And the reason he wanted to heat on Dog is because Dog couldn't take the bump over the top rope in those days at that point, the condition he was in. So I talked to the cops and they said, we're going to stay right next to you. So I think they had 4 uniformed police officers with billy clubs and guns, right? They were legitimate, but they only had 4 in the whole place. So they gave them all to me. And they just walked us out to the ring and stood behind me, all 4 of them, where people couldn't even see me. And I'm just hugging the ring post. I ain't going to do shit in this match, right? And Bobby and Dennis took bumps for the baby faces, and then they got a little heat, and then the tag and the comeback. And by the time that Magnum went over the top rope, we were already on the floor and headed back to the locker room. And once we got in there, the cops locked the door and said, we'll come back and get you later. And we had to sit there for fucking almost an hour because they had to go out. They had to clear all the people out of the building. And then they had to clear most people out of the parking lot. And then they came and got us, unlocked the door, took us to our car, and then surrounded the car on foot and walked us to the road. And they had already told us, look, because we were going to Thibodaux. We had a show that night in Thibodaux, Louisiana. And they said, look, it'd probably be a good idea. Don't stop in this town. Just when you turn left, keep going. Because there's only one road in and one road out. And if they get us on they get on the wrong side in between us and where we're going, we got to go past them, right? So off we go to Thibodeau. And the match had just started. The Midnight's match had just started when somebody threw a fucking beer in Bobby's eyes, and he was blind. And I'm trying to help him wipe his eyes out with my tail of my jacket while the cops are watching to make sure nobody sticks me in the fucking ribs with a knife. So it was a wonderful Sunday afternoon. And then we get to Thibodeau, and we got to have the match with 2 and TA where we get disqualified and leave them laying there. And the cops had to walk us out of that fucking place and get us in the car. And Thibodeau was only 50 miles from Galliano, but it's still not exactly right in the center of things. And then we were 150 miles away from Alexandria. So, you know, we started the morning at the hotel in Baton Rouge. We went to Galliano, worked, sat around while they cleared the potential assassins, went to Thibodeau, did another fucking match. The house there was $18,700. So that was over 2,000 people. And we made $500, which is the equivalent of $1,500 today a piece for the day. But we started at fucking whatever time in the morning and didn't get back to Alexandria until, probably about 1:30. And that's why I was saying earlier when we were talking on, I think it was a previous segment at this point, the reason why a world-class talent, Brian may have been on the card at a spot show is because they were in for the weekend. Yeah, Laranja, Galliano, and Thibodeau are shit fucking places to go. But between the three of those shows in a 24-hour period, Mid-South Wrestling grossed almost $40,000, which would be $120,000 today. So he said, yeah, send me these two guys or this match or whatever off your TV that airs in these markets, and I'm going to work them on these shows over the weekend. And boy, did he.
When you guys are locked in that room, what do you guys talk about?
Whether the fuck we're going to get out of there alive or not.
I mean, this was a new situation for you. Was this had Dennis ever experienced anything like this?
Well, yeah, Dennis, most of the three of us, Dennis had, had some heat and worked on top and been in the small towns. And he was usually prepared for any eventuality. But at the same time, we all got to be looking at, because Dennis, this was a new level for anybody that hadn't worked the Louisiana territory. Even veteran heels, the frequency and the frequency that something occurred with somebody hitting the ring or somebody getting involved in something coming from the ring or just the cops having to take extra precautions. It was almost everywhere in these fucking towns. And that was a little off-putting even to the veterans. But at the same time, we know, okay, we're in this room. We ain't going to leave until the cops come get us. There are no windows. We don't know what's going on outside. There's no cell phones. There's no internet. So we're just sitting there waiting for them to fucking come and get us. They promised they were going to get us off the property safely. We're going to hold them to it. I mean, what else can you do?
Do any of the veterans there say anything to you guys about how much heat you're getting so quickly?
Yeah, well, I've mentioned that from the start when they saw me, they say, oh, God, you got to watch out, or various forms of that. But, I mean, they're not going to.
Now it's happening. Now it's starting to happen.
And in those days, guys didn't just go up, oh, man, you had a great match. What a great match you had, right? Nobody did that in those days to the level they do it today. And if it were really your best friends, you would, say something or put them over. But for the most part, it was just the acknowledgement that a lot of the guys would come up and say, well, hey, we're going to, because see, in Galliano, this particular time I'm talking about, it's a double shot. We were last. Everybody else is gone. We're the only ones in the locker room. Everybody else had to go because they've got to get there and do the fucking show because we're on last in goddamn Thibodeau. So we had nobody but the cops to help. But a lot of times in these towns, you would see that Nikolai or Butch Reed or, Buddy rode with us a lot. They would say, well, we'll start, sticking around to watch and make sure you get back okay. That was more important than, hey, you guys are really getting a lot of heat and drawing money that we weren't drawing before. It's like, hey, we'll help you, that type of thing. Everything's positive. And then, as a matter of fact, now that I'm looking at the schedule, probably since some of the world-class talent was in, they were also in on Monday because Monday, February 6th was New Orleans. And even though we went back to Alexandria, Thibodaux is not that far from New Orleans. So for people who didn't live anywhere around, they probably stayed over. And New Orleans was another match with 2 and TA for us. Remember, the last time was a disqualification and we bailed at the St. Bernard building. This time we're back in the downtown building and it's another $30,800 house. And we got $350, which is a little over $1,000 today. And this one, I tossed the racket in while the referee is putting Magnum out. And Wrestling 2, after giving Bobby the knee lift, sees that and dives for me. But Dennis has the racket and whacks him from behind and shoots him in and clotheslines him with the racket behind the referee's back, who's checking on TA. And Bobby covers 2 and we beat him. And that didn't set well. So now we're doing, and by the way, these are non-title matches for the Mid-South Tag Team title. They're still the champions, but they said we needed to prove ourselves by, beating them first or whatever the fuck the deal was. So we've had double DQs. We've had crazy thrown out finishes. Now we're starting to fuck them in these non-title matches. So that's getting a little bit more, heat from the people because we're fucking them. And the people didn't like that back in those days. So anyway, another lovely goddamn. Oh, and by the way, the reason why we went back to goddamn Alexandria on Sunday night and then back to New Orleans is because we had to go on from New Orleans. We were in Biloxi the next day on February 7th, and that's 60 miles past New Orleans, farther from our homes. So we got a hotel room and stayed in New Orleans and then went on to Biloxi the next day. And I've mentioned before how badly I hated Biloxi, Mississippi as a building, have I not? The Mississippi Gulf Coast Coliseum, that big, giant, 18,000 seat building that was dark as a fucking tomb, that we never drew in, that even a goddamn big house that we had one time looked like a piss hole in a snowbank, and that we got jumped on and attacked in the goddamn dark on numerous occasions. Have I mentioned that town?
I'm not sure.
Well, I'm mentioning it now. And I don't know what happened this night. We were wrestling Junkyard Dog and Magnum TA. So no, it didn't happen this night. But this is the town where that big fucking corn-fed farm guy came at Bobby Eaton and fucking tackled him, and Bobby front face locked the guy, and the guy had to be 6'4", 350 and stood up underneath Bobby. And it looked like Bobby looked like he was the trunk on an elephant. The guy was swinging Bobby in the air. Bobby wouldn't let go, and the guy wouldn't go down. He wiped out all the ringside seats with Bobby until Bobby could fucking ground the motherfucker. The cops are fighting people. The fucking old man comes up to me. He's wearing one of those old fucking old man hats from the 50s and got a cigar stuck in his mouth. He's reaching in his pocket. Well, fuck it. I kicked him in the fucking balls. And then I think Dennis ended up with a black eye on that trip back, and somebody bloused my eye, and Bobby was scraped all up from being taken a tour around ringside by Plowboy fucking Mississippi. Yeah, it was a fun town because it was so dark. They were only using part of the building, and you had to walk into pitch blackness to get back to the locker room area, and there wasn't any barricades. So they would rush you when they were mad and do shit. That's the town. When we used my belt, I believe, to close. No, it might have been my shoe to knock Ricky Morton out. Ricky was laying there flat of his back in a fucking ring with one eye open, watching us get the shit kicked out of us, trying to get back to the fucking locker room, dying laughing at us. Anyway, Biloxi, Mississippi. Lousy house, $7,200.
What'd you
Now
think of the
here-
movie Biloxi Blues?
I didn't see it
Based on the play, Biloxi Blues.
because I've had previous ill will with Biloxi.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Neil Simon, but okay.
Here's what we had to do. We had to get on Interstate 10 in Biloxi after the show, which probably got out about 10 o'clock. And we had to go through New Orleans to Baton Rouge and then take the state highway from Baton Rouge back to Alexandria. So Biloxi was 250 miles and it was a 5-hour drive. We got back probably about 3 a.m. And God damn it, I needed to leave my house at 6:30 a.m. to go to Shreveport and do interviews. Those cocksuckers booked Biloxi on a Tuesday night. Oh, I hated them. And then we did interviews on Wednesday, February 8th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. in Shreveport, Louisiana. And then hopped in the car and fucking drove to goddamn Lafayette, which was 100 miles over. And I'm trying to remember why we had 2 matches in a row with TA and Dog instead of TA and 2, but I don't know. But finally it was a double disqualification, and Bobby grabbed the racket and Dog grabbed the chain, and it was a standoff, so we ran off. And that was all that happened there because it was a lousy fucking house. More on Lafayette later. And then the following night, February 9th, was Lake Charles, Louisiana, where we did another. Remember, I think the last one was $5,600 or something. Well, this one was $6,800. It's coming up slowly. But another match with Magnum TA and Wrestling 2, where I throw the powder in 2's face and get disqualified. And TA chases me into the ring, but Dennis hangs him up in the ropes as he's trying to get to me. And I'm keeping him off balance while Dennis and Bobby are kicking a shit out of Wrestling 2, and then Junkyard Dog comes and makes the save. Because Brian, in about a month or so, maybe not even, remember, Wrestling 2 is not only going to turn heel, but he's going to be the end of Junkyard Dog for a while in Mid-South. So it was even more hard for the people to stomach that when Dog had been coming out to rescue Wrestling 2 from getting the shit kicked out of him, and then to have to do things like that to Magnum, his partner, and Dog, his friend. Got a little bit more heat, right? So anyway, and then we finish up the weekend with a bang, and there's a moral to the story here. And Brian, you've been asking when did you realize this, or when did you know that, or were you doubting things, or you know the questions you've been asking. And this weekend, Friday, February 10, Saturday, February 11, is where we really got some answers and we started to feel really good. And I will explain why. And by the way, I'm an idiot. I should have mentioned this earlier because before we started recording, I did a little research. I know I'm talking about these matches. Well, we did this and did that and blowing by it, right? And it's hard to picture if you've never seen them before. You and I have seen the tapes many times. But this stuff is on YouTube. You know me, I'm an internet idiot, right? I go to YouTube and type in Midnight Express versus 2 and TA Houston, and all kinds of shit pops up. None of it, I don't know who any of these people are. None of it's probably legal. But the Houston matches exist because we've talked about how Paul did his TV there. It was customized, and they shot raw footage of all the matches, and then they'd go back and use on TV what they wanted, right? And then the same thing that Watts would do sometimes with the camera in Oak City or Tulsa or someplace.
Well, Houston TV also started incorporating clips from Watts' show once in '83 they made the deal.
Right. So it was and it was an hour and a half, so you had more time. But I looked on you, not only that, but some of the Mid-South TV, including the compilations of the interview we did where we tarred and feathered Magnum, the angle there. All this stuff is there if you look for it. Folks, I'm endorsing no one. But one guy even had a playlist, as the kids call it, of all of the Midnight Express matches from the year that we're talking about, including this one this weekend. So, if again, totally illegal, not plugging anyone, but you can see this shit, folks. If they won't put it on the cock, it's still easy to find until YouTube goes under. So this was Friday, February 10th, as I said, in Houston, and it was the main event against 2 and TA. And this is Brian Hildebrand was there. He had come down to spend the weekend with us and take pictures for the magazine, right? Mark Curtis. And so there's a picture that I've got that you probably got it in the Wrestling News files of me throwing powder in Wrestling 2's face and the cloud being perfectly enveloping him and all that shit, right? You remember that?
I do.
He took it this night. And this was the Paul Bosch story, because I just went back and looked at the last 2 or 3 minutes of it. I hadn't seen it in years. And now that I'm looking at it for this, we almost got killed, I think, that night. Because the deal was that boom, 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 all this shit's going on. The referee's distracted. I throw the powder in Wrestling 2's face, and fucking Magnum goes after me, and the referee sees it and calls the DQ, but Dennis wallops fucking Magnum while he's chasing me, and Magnum catches his leg in the bottom rope and hangs upside down from the bottom and second rope where his leg is caught. He's hanging off the apron out toward the floor, right? And so Bobby and Dennis get Wrestling 2 in the middle of the ring and start kicking the bejesus out of him and beating him with a racket. And I take my belt off and I start whipping the shit out of Magnum. And they just told me, and I'm going to do whatever the fuck, right? I'm doing what I'm told at that point. They had just told me, they said, just whip him until we fucking get the heat on Magnum and 2. And I think the referee was going to threaten to suspend me or something or other. Or I don't know if I had an out cue. Somebody was just going to come and get me. So I'm just whipping the shit. I got so tired standing on the apron and whipping him, and I can see the cops starting to get in front of the people that are crowding up around the rail around where I'm at, but I've got tunnel vision. I'm just going to whip Magnum. And I'm tired bending over, and so I fucking jumped down on the floor. I figured, well, there's the cops, and I'm whipping the shit out of him again. And he's like fucking yelling too, like, God damn it, because I'm laying him in. And what I don't realize until I saw this tape back, Brian, you've heard the stories of how, and you've seen the Houston footage, right? When there's shit going on in the ring, those people are yelling and screaming. It's loud. It's crazy, right? And all the tapes.
Right.
Including some of this one earlier in the match. These people had stopped yelling and screaming. They were all standing. Nobody was leaving. People were starting to crowd closer around the ring, but the level of sound had gone down to the fucking murmur. And the house was $45,000. And that was 5,000 or 6,000 people, probably, with prices in those days. So it was about a half a house, but still, it should have been louder. And you've heard the stories from the old timers, the white heat, the silent heat. When the crowd gets quieter, that's when you got to watch out. Apparently, that's what this was. And I didn't know it because I was too busy whipping the shit out of Magnum TA, right? I don't know what the fuck is going on around me. I'm in the main event in Houston, and I'm going to whip this motherfucker until somebody comes and gets me. And who came and got me was Paul Bosch, because he heard this, and they wouldn't stop beating up Wrestling 2 in the ring, Bobby and Dennis, and I wouldn't stop. And now when you see the wide shot from the hard camera, after we leave the ring and they're focusing on just the ring because it's raw footage, right? With Magnum selling and 2's trying to get his shit together. The cops have some guy on the far side that they've been over. They restrained with the fucking orange security shirt guy that used to take the jackets. And they're handcuffing him and going to drag him out. He's come over the rail. All these other fucking people are still standing and crowding around. I'm whipping him, and suddenly I feel a hand on my shoulder, and I hear the crowd pop at the same time, and you can hear it on the video. It goes from that murmur like, do we need to go down there and help these fucking people? As soon as they saw Paul Bosch put his hand on my shoulder, the crowd fucking pops like a baby face is making a comeback in the ring. They recognized Paul when he came to the ring. And it was like, okay, it's all right now. We don't need to take action. It's the goddamnedest, and there's no commentary on this match, so you can actually just hear it. And I feel his hand, and I look over, and there's Paul Bosch in my face. He says, "Get to the locker room now." I'm like, what? Go, get your boys. I'm fuck. So I jump in, and you see me jump in the ring and go, leave. We got to go. And I think it's Dennis. He's not fitting. He grabs the fucking belt from me, and he's going to fucking do something he's going to whip Magnum or something. And he goes over there, and he sees Paul Bosch and turns around. And I'm still trying to corral Bobby and Dennis to get them out of the fucking ring, as Paul has told me, get the fuck out of here. And so the cops then crowd around us, and you see they've still got the fucking guy over on the other side. And all these people felt somewhat better about the situation because Paul Bosch had personally, involved himself in it to save the day, or we might have gotten fucking killed if we'd have tried to leave the ring without that happening. And we didn't even know it's only the third time we'd been in Houston, right? We didn't know what the fuck. So that's when he fucking came back and said, this was twice in a row. First, he yelled at Dundee the previous time. Then he's yelling at us. He said, you people are going to cause a riot here. And he keep it in the ring, calm it down. Okay, Paul, yes, sir. But we made $600 that night, which was the equivalent of modern day of $1,800 for the one night. And there we saw, okay, this is one of the biggest towns in the territory. We're obviously getting a reaction. So we think it's going to be okay, right? And if Paul had still been doing the payoffs, we'd probably got 1,500 and he might have fined us something. But this was on the Mid-South pay structure, so it was down, but still, it wasn't bad.
84 is the year everyone talks about Mid-South Wrestling. Bill Watts always talked about the year the business exploded. He made more money that year than any other year. It's, the peak year of Mid-South Wrestling. It's all downhill after that. But same thing for Houston. Houston had an amazing year. It was just as hot there, even though you consider that part of Mid-South, it was its own thing. JYD had gotten hot there before the Mid-South relationship. But everything exploded there, especially when the rock and roll came in. It ended up being one of the great years in Houston history, too.
And I've actually, hold on. Right at my fingertips, Brian Last, I have the information to make a comment on what you were saying.
That was quick.
Houston, Texas, in 1984, sold over 175,000 tickets and drew approximately $1,150,000 at the gate, based on what they told me and what I observed with my eyes. So in one town, and so and triple the money for modern day. So that's $3.5 million, right? The good old days. But anyway, so then. That was good on Friday night, and we didn't get killed, and we got over. And then Saturday, February the 11th, we were the main event in Shreveport, which was, again, we went home to Alexandria, got home at 3 o'clock in the morning, and at least we only had to, it was 2.5 hours to Shreveport the next day. And the people in Shreveport had been seeing us since we started because, as we mentioned, the Irish McNeil Boys Club was every other week. They taped the TV. Every other week was the Shreveport Municipal Auditorium, the old building that Elvis had been on that stage. And it was a regular town in the territory. And I mean, going back to the days when Buddy Fuller, ran that part of the country in the 50s and 60s and through the McGurk days, it had never been a big money town in the overall scheme of things, but it was steady for years, right? But it's the old building, and I don't know what the seating capacity was, to be honest, but it was one of those old auditoriums that they used to have, and the Kiel Auditorium was a grand version of it. This place, maybe you could get 3,000 people in, which is about what we probably had here, because that night were the main event against Magnum and Wrestling 2 with the lashes stipulation. Because since Shreveport had seen all these angles between the TV and then the live audience and everything, Dundee throws this in with what he's going to take around the territory later on. the loser of the match gets 10 lashes with a leather strap. And if they win, I'm included, right? So basically, the promos are built around, we're going to, the heels, we're saying we're going to whip you like the dogs you are, but the baby faces are saying we're going to give Cornette his lashes too. And that now the people have seen me do all this shit. They want to, nobody has touched me. The Midnight Express have not done a job. So, that's what they want to see. The house was $22,000. That doesn't sound that impressive, except it was the record house that they had ever done in that building by almost $5,000. Because as I said, the tickets back then were, let's say, 10, 7, and 4. $10 ringside, $7 general admission, $4 for kids. And it wasn't a big building. The ring was not on the stage. It was on the floor in front of the stage and did have some ringside. So, it was there 400 ringside seats? I don't think so. So you probably got a $7.50 ticket average, which meant they put 3,000 people in this building.
It also says a lot about the problems with the arguments about money now versus money then when it comes to pro wrestling. When people say like, oh, this person or this thing is more successful than anything was then. Different kind of fans then went, you could have sold out the building. But not only did they not sell tickets that were $30, $50, let alone a couple $100, there was no chance in hell it would have worked back then.
No, God,
Society was different, fans were different kind of fan base.
Let me just say this though. Do you know what the ticket price was the first time I saw Earth, Wind, and Fire live in concert?
What year would it have been? And no, I don't.
1970. Oh, God damn it. Was it nine?
That was a good year.
Nine? Well, 70. Oh, God, 8 or 9. Let's say $7.
That seems expensive for the time.
Well, but it was a big show. But that's what I'm saying. But at the same time, we were also at these towns, again, depending on the territory, every week, every 2 weeks, whatever the case. But nevertheless, that's when, because they came in and reported pretty much the house by the time the bell rang, because everybody was in there already. They weren't going to sell any more tickets. And then you have to realize, okay, yes, they've probably drawn this many people back in the days of Sputnik Monroe, right? In the early 60s, the tickets were cheaper then than this. So we've set the gate record, but just the fact that we set it, and we set it by that much, even in the modern era, when we're in the main event in a territory that we've only fucking been in for, they've been seeing us on TV for 10 weeks, tops in Shreveport, and they've seen us live like 3 times. So that was okay. Yeah, this is going to fucking be fine. And we made $350, which is equal to a little over 1,000 in today's money. So that week, for New Orleans, Biloxi, Lafayette, Lake Charles, Houston, Shreveport, and the following day, Lincoln's birthday, Sunday the 12th, in Little Rock, Arkansas, we made $1,765 and were the main event on most of those shows, except for Houston, the moderate markets. And then Little Rock was up to almost $17,000, and and Bobby got a board broke over his poor fucking head again. But they're starting to react. They're starting to go. In January, Little Rock was $10,000. So we're making the equivalent of today over $5,000 a week in a week of moderate markets, and we've just got there. So now we're pretty well figuring this is going to work. To answer your question of, what were we thinking at the time? At first, we were like, eh. But then once we saw the response to this, it was almost like shit. And that's where I really learned how the business is supposed to work, or worked in the days when the angle you did, or the issue you had amongst the talent that you had working on top could make a massive difference in how you drew at the house shows. It was very simple. If you get the talent over and then you give them an issue that they can fucking have a conflict over, people want to come see this shit. If the talent's good and the booking's good, that's the fucking formula. And I've never seen it fail. If it fails, it's because one or the other ain't working. But anyway, you can look at this on YouTube apparently now in an unofficial way, as we follow along the year of 1984, because we're about, a month away from the last Stampede angle and about 6 weeks away from setting every record in the goddamn territory.
All right, 6 weeks away, as you said.
6 weeks away
from setting those records, and we'll be here for those 6 weeks waiting.
Well, you can't afford to miss it.
All right, well, this has been a look back at Mid-South 1984 with Super Mario, and we're going to now return to your regularly scheduled programming, but we will be returning, of course, with Part 2 of February 84, as Jim said, on the road to the last Stampede.
That's a spicy podcast. All righty, folks. Well, there we were with another installment. We're going to be doing that in a couple of weeks again, bringing you farther up to date on my exploits in 1984, 40 years ago, when we can get a breath of fresh air around all this modern wrestling news, Brian. But again, the program is done today unless you have any pearls of wisdom you would like to leave the people with.
We'll be back on the drive-thru before you know it. Of course, if anything crazy happens, and boy, no one can contain themselves nowadays, we'll be on the YouTube channel with stuff early, and that's it. We'll see you on the drive-thru and, of course, on YouTube.
Well, in that case, if you've already said that's it, I will second that emotion. And folks, until the drive-thru and next week on The Experience, thank you, fuck you, and bye-bye, everybody.